Yeah, good for her. Look, Ron DeSantis is trying to call. All right, everyone. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Destin City Council, November 7th, 2022, to order. Up first, Pastor David Butler, would you like to lead us in invocation, sir?
Thank you, Mayor, City Council men and women. Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we thank you for once again another eventful evening, Lord, of good things happening in our community. We ask your blessings upon this meeting tonight. We pray that everything be done in decency and in order. We ask, Lord God, that you would favor and continue to bless our community, bless our city, our state, our nation. Father, we're here tonight also to say farewell to our mayor. We thank you for his service to our community. We thank you for the life that he's given, the years, and Lord, the blood, sweat, and tears. We thank you for his wife, Pam, here tonight. We speak your blessings upon them. We pray, Lord, that you would be forever with them as they continue their service in this community, in this state, and in your business, Lord. Now bless the remainder of the meeting tonight. May everything be pleasing, and we give you the praise in advance. In Jesus' name, amen.
Lance, you want to take it away?
Check, check. Okay, good. I do want to remind everyone in honor of the mayor's last night, we have a beautiful cake over here, so please feel free to go over there and get yourself a piece of the cake. But first of all, I want to say that behind every good man is a great woman. So to honor you for putting up with us for however many years it's been, we want to present you with a bouquet of roses. So Pam, thank you so much. Thank you. And then I'm short and sweet, just like you are, so I'll keep it short and sweet, but it's been an honor and a privilege to serve under you. I wish you the best of luck. I know you won't be a stranger. Hopefully you're going to take me fishing one of these days, teach me how to do that. But you'll be missed, and in a token of our appreciation, we'll present you with the watch.
Thank you, sir. Yes. You want to take a picture? You got it?
I thought you were going to say a few words.
I am. Short notes. Needless to say, I think you all have seen the agenda. We're going to be here a while. So I'm going to keep it short and sweet so we can get to the city's business. During the course of the meeting, feel free to get your sugar fixed. The ladies created a wonderful cake, and it's really, really good. I just want to thank everyone that's been involved in this governmental process since I was duly elected mayor. I want to thank our city councils, the previous one and the one that's sitting at the table today. Especially I want to thank our staff that was, so supportive of everything that we tried to do here. But more importantly, I want to thank the public, the people that put me in office, and the folks, especially the folks here tonight that have been involved in the legislative and in the process of making Destin a really good place to live. Not being satisfied with where we are today, but really focused on where do we go tomorrow. I got a couple words of encouragement on my way out the door, and it's a revolving door because I'm going to come right back in and get on this side of the podium and be sitting in the seat with y'all and still being involved in my community. I think it's real important that we finish what we've started and that we be doers. And that's not just directed towards our council, but for the community as a whole. You know, we started the beach access buyback program, and that's not just buying beach for access, even though it's a generational thing that'll never go away. Our residents and our visitors will have that access for generations to come, and it was sorely needed. But more importantly, buying that beach is what feeds the economic engine of Destin. It pays for itself, and it protects the Destin brand, so you and your children and your children's children can always count on this community growing and being proactive and being fruitful financially, because we have the special brand here that's like no other anywhere in the country. I would like to see us finally finish a crosstown connector. It's been in the works for a number of years, and we're right on the cusp. In fact, it's on the agenda tonight that we see that through, because that, unlike the beach access, which benefits both tourism and our local residents, that crosstown connector is going to benefit the people that live and work and play here more than any visitor. They may benefit for 100 days, but that 265 days, that's our road. So I hope we get this thing going, get her done. Another thing we started during my term, and my term was supposed to be 4 years, but thanks to Parker Destin, it turned out to be 4 years, 8 months, and a few more days. And I didn't even get to vote. But we've started the process of undergrounding Highway 98 and changing our view corridor. It's a monumental task. It's expensive, but it's going to set Destin on a course as we underground the rest of our community that's going to change Destin forever. This council, before this council and this council here and the preceding councils, are going to be challenged to seeing that project through. And I think it's going to be very, very important for our community. And then lastly is just finish our parks. The ones that are under construction now, the ones that we've set the table for a few more to be improved, but we still got a big opportunity at Joe's Bayou to make this a special place. This is a 7.5 square mile area with a population of 14,000, and we've probably got $50 million worth of Bayside parks. That's spectacular for a community like this, and most of it's paid for by federal grants, and it doesn't put a burden on our people, so we need to finish those parks. I want to encourage this council and our staff, and just to let our public know that one of the things I did when I came in as mayor was try to build a team where the council and the city staff began to build teamwork. And when you build teamwork, you also build trust. And so when you have teamwork and trust, you become efficient and proficient, and you accomplish the things that have been set before you. I think this staff and this council is on the path to create that teamwork and that trust that's going to perpetuate into the next decade, and it's going to allow us to, that task I just laid out of finishing what we started, those are monumental things to do. And by working as a team, I think this group, the men and women behind me and men and women that are represented by our staff, our city manager, they're going to make it happen. I also want to just say, lastly, and this is just to put a bug in your ear, and I'm going to repeat it when I get on this side of the podium, is I think it's time, you know, we established this incorporated in our city charter in 1985. I think we're lining up to do a charter review. One of the things that this citizenry deserves, and I think in this council does too, is taking a look at our form of government. We have a small community here, and I think it would be beneficial if we went to 4 districts with 4 district representatives and a mayor that can vote. That's 5 votes to prevent ties. But more importantly, it provides a level of accountability, not only to the council members, but it gives the constituents, the people that live here, to know who to turn to work on issues that are important to them, to come up with ideas, and let that person bring that to the table here, representing their constituents in getting those type of ideas done. Government is slow, and in many ways, at times, very inefficient. I've battled that as an advocate for my industry for 25 years. So one thing that's important to me, especially coming from my charter boat background, is let's recognize the problem, come up with a solution, and fix it. I think a little more efficient, streamlined form of government will allow that to take place, and I hope that when we get into our charter review, we look at that as an alternative. I think it creates more interest in each respective district. I think it will make it more efficient when we have issues and challenges in our community, and I think it'll make the job of the council itself much more efficient. So I just want to thank everybody for putting up with me for 4 years and 8 months. I guarantee you I'm not going away. There's a lot of things that we've started that I want to help these folks see them through, and still on time to time get to see the staff members and the people that have supported this community so much. These guys run the city, these guys set policy and legislate, but we're the ones that make a difference on how that all takes place. Thank you very much. Thank you, council, for bearing with me on that deal. First up is agenda approval. I'll entertain a motion at this time or any recommendations.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
And I'd like to pull 3J, please, or pull it out of the consent agenda.
Okay, do you want to take that up right prior to the city's manager report, Jim? Does that sound good to you? All right, we're going to move that to right before the city manager's report.
Mayor, while we're on it, then I'm going to go ahead and take 3G and put it before or after 3J.
Okay, we'll
I
do
guess
it.
before, since G comes before J.
Yeah.
All right. I already drew an arrow, but I'll make it back. All right, so we have item 3G and J pulled out of the consent agenda and for discussion prior to the city manager's report. Other than that, we have a motion to approve the agenda. Let's go ahead and take a vote. Mr. Destin?
It's not up on the screen back.
All right, we got it. All ayes have it, so moved. Yeah, you just have to repeat button pushing. All right, we don't have any proclamations. We already got that out of the way with my long-winded short speech. Public comments. I just want to remind everyone, you get 3 minutes at 2 minutes and 45 seconds. I'll ask you politely to wrap up your thoughts. We have a lot of folks here tonight, and you can speak on anything that's on the agenda or not on the agenda if you have a pet peeve, except for the items on the public hearings, and we had 3 public hearings tonight. So as long as you're speaking to something other than what's on the public hearings, you have 3 minutes to speak. I also want to remind everyone that at the end, you have another opportunity to make comments on anything we've said or done, or if something pops up in your mind that you didn't say the first time you had an opportunity to speak. And with that all being said, I'm going to go ahead and work at the far end of the room over here, and then I'll just work back towards the center, and we'll try to get this meeting done before the election starts tomorrow morning. Anyone like to come up and make a comment? Just come on up. State your name, address. 3 minutes, ma'am.
I may go 3 minutes and 15 seconds. Marcy Bell, 3 Gulf Breeze Court. Tonight I want to tell you that I also am an advocate, just like you, Mayor. I've been advocating for the citizens of this city for over 8 years, and while I agree with most everything that you said, the one thing that I don't agree with is the communication and trust that the citizens have with the city at this moment. I hear from a lot of people just like you guys do. And with that being said, I want to talk with you a moment about code compliance, my favorite subject. Selective enforcement. I'm going to use one example. Waste Management. I stood up here in front of you guys and I argued and fought for the citizens because Waste Management wanted to charge us overages. Would we all agree on that? And I won. The citizens behind me that have residential garbage, 96-gallon cans, did not get charged overages on their new Waste Management franchise agreement because of me. And you guys, of course. I'll give you a little credit. So with that being said, I turned in a Waste Management overage last week, and it was ignored. I can't tell you why. Y'all saw it. You all received the email. Nothing was written up about it. Nothing, no violation, nothing. I turned in one today, 6 cans. They called the management company. Short-term rental, long-term rental. Come on, guys. All rules apply to all the properties equally all the time. Come on. I cannot fight this for everybody for the rest of my life. It's easy. Just do it. It's what code compliance is about. Code enforcement, whatever you want to call it. And the last thing that I want to say is that it's not the guys on the street. It's not the guys doing the beat. I have no issues with those guys because you have code enforcement officers that have left their jobs for 2 reasons. Because they've been told that they can't do the job that they were hired to do, and because you have sexual harassment inside your city. And if you don't believe me, I promise you, 9 documents that I pulled in public records from the city of Niceville with a current employee in code compliance. You go pull them. I don't have to share them. They're there. And when you have females who are being sexually harassed by a man in your department that should have never been hired by the city of Destin and should not be in code compliance over women, is he doing it to anybody else in the city outside of his department? I don't know. That's all I have to say, and I apologize I have to go out like this. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone here at the center of the room? Well, seeing how no one else is going to step up, we're going to go ahead and close the public comment period. We will move right along to consent. I have a motion. I have a second.
Second.
I have a second. Let's go ahead and take a vote. Ayes have it, so moved. We pulled item G and J, so let's just start with G. Mr. Schmidt, you pulled it, so I'll let you start.
Thank you. I just had some questions for staff in regards to the process for a couple of these speed humps that we were wanting to install. I talked to Michael today, and I think we're on the Beach Drive one. Is Michael here? Yeah, I'm right here. Oh, so sorry. I was. Is that one being? Are we going to fix where we're putting those, or are we still putting them where you're wanting to put them based upon the report?
No, sir, as I mentioned to you in our call today, I was absolutely mistaken about where we were going to put those. But after I went back and looked through some emails and a few maps that were prepared, we're going to put them south of Legion, approximately about where Bent Arrow is and about where Sandalwood is.
And now, have we
And it'll
gone
cover
through
those 2 churches.
Have we gone through any type of study or process to look at that area of putting them installed, or are we just rolling with it?
This was based on basically council's, I don't want to say consensus, but just kind of moving forward with it, wanting to bring back pricing for those speed humps installation. And I've done that tonight, and we just wanted to see where it fell. And if, we will need to go back and do a speed study or something like that. But this came up during the public comment session at a meeting a few months ago.
And I'm fine with the price, and I'm all about the safety and the speed hump devices, but I just wanted to make sure we were utilizing the correct location on that one. And then the other one on, I know Mr. Destin made a motion, we all agreed upon that one to put there, which is fantastic. And then the last one, there was a study done, I guess, and the Public Works approved to put one between Kelly and Hickory, which is that little road that leads you to the park. the baseball park. And it says that there was a speed, and it's about, what, 50 yards, 75 yards long? Somebody was going 80-something miles an hour on that particular little spot?
Yes, sir. The engineering division set up a speed detection device and clocked someone doing 87 in that very short run of road.
And the people that, it said in the notes from the Public Works and Safety meeting, I can't remember if it was you or Mr. Bodie, but there was a lot of calls or something. Is it people, there's only a handful of houses on that street, so I'm assuming it was somebody that lives there that's putting this request in?
Yeah, that went through the engineering division. Joe's not here tonight to speak to that, but it went through the normal speed hump request process and went through the Public Works and Safety Committee for a recommendation.
All right, I'm good. Thank you very much.
Seeing that you pull out,
Sure.
entertain a motion to approve that.
Motion.
You're good with it?
To approve, I don't have it in front of me, but motion to approve the item as is,
Second?
based upon the change that Michael said on Beach Drive.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a motion, you approve that, second? All right, let's go ahead and take it to a vote. Ayes have it, so moved. Okay, next item, Jim?
Oops, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah,
Ray, clear my thing, I hit the button too many times. Sorry, Jim, go ahead, sir.
so we have been down this path a few times before where we entertained charitable donations, either as a council, but I think this is the first time that we've been asked by an individual to reimburse a charitable donation. And I am personally opposed to that. I have a very generous wife, and we spend a lot on local charities, but I wouldn't think to ask y'all to endorse some charity that I gave to, whether I was wearing my shirt or not wearing my shirt or whatever. My bigger point is that if we're going to go down this road, then we need to have a policy. Because I know, for instance, Mr. Destin, I've been to charitable events at his restaurant. I think I've actually been to charitable events at your son's restaurants before. And I'm not opposed to doing that and leaving money or leaving a check or whatever for getting rid of lionfish or getting candidates or whatever, or other charitable causes, but I'm opposed to spending the people's money on that, unless we have a policy and unless we say, this is what you have to do. You have to get the council's approval, you have to do this. As a fiscal conservative, I can't support this request, and I give credit and kudos to Councilwoman Hebert representing us, but it's, the charitable donation 501c3 letter is not to us, it's to her. And so I would just make a motion. Actually, before I make a motion, I give Teresa the chance to.
Thanks. And as I listen to this, I mean, it makes sense. They did invite the city of Destin, apparently. However, they sent the email to us. It never got to any of us. And because the Air Force connections that I have, I had gotten a phone call and asked, why weren't any of us going? And I said, I never even saw the email. So they asked if I would like to attend and represent Destin. And I said, well, let me see if I can get the city to pay for it. It was a $300 was the minimum donation, up to $5,000 or $10,000. So Ray said he would have to get it approved by the city manager, and the city manager said, this is something I have to get approved through council. Well, I wanted to attend because of I don't know if anyone out there can see it, but it was an event celebrating the service accomplishments of the 595 horse soldiers of the Task Force Dagger operations in Afghanistan following the tragic events on September 11, 2001. I was on the George Washington in 2001. I mean, I served during some of the conflict, and so I was, absolutely overwhelmed, and it was an honor to meet them and to hear their stories, because the movie doesn't do it justice. I paid for this out of pocket because I thought the city would reimburse me, but if in future this is not the way things are done, I will certainly continue to pay, because I've done a lot of other events and paid out of pocket for myself and, not had the city pay. But I thought, as the city was supposed to be represented, and we never got the email as a city official invite, I paid for it ahead of time, thinking I'd get reimbursed. So, I mean, going forward, I would certainly, if we don't have a policy that covers this, I would just pay out of pocket. But at this point, I thought this was a city representative position, and so I paid thinking I was going to be representing the city and be reimbursed by the city. So I asked in this case, the reimbursement, and then going forward, if we go for something and we make a donation, then we just make the donation because we want to make it out of our own personal pocket. I don't have as many pockets and monies that you have, as we talked about. So, you know, I'm very cautious of what I do spend my money on. So I would ask at this time, the council approve this, but going forward, we make it where we either decide we do this or we don't. And then if you want to go and represent the city, it's out of your own pocket. That's all I ask.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I agree with both sides, but I don't know why. I'm glad the city manager wanted to bring it to the council, but I don't know why it was put under the consent agenda and not under the city manager's reports. I don't know, it just seems like that, glad you didn't donate the $5,000, but it just seems like this falls under the same thing as if I go attend a ribbon cutting or something, I don't get reimbursed for that. I wish it was done a little bit different, or we could have approved it to start with. Yeah. Okay. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, Dewey?
Thank you, Mayor. I hate to see us make a big deal out of what is something we probably all would have agreed with had we known in advance.
Yep.
And so our only transgression here is that we didn't have the opportunity to know in advance. So on this one, I would be in favor of reimbursement. And as Ms. Hebert said, and all of us, I think, now know that should something like this come up again, let's get the improvement, the permission to do it ahead of time.
Would you like to make a motion along that effect, please?
I will make a motion that we cover this one, and that, I don't know if we need a resolution brought back, but I think we all understand this presents itself to us again to try to get permission before we go. But as far as giving money to this particular organization, and in this circumstances, I support it.
Second.
All right, I got a motion and a second. Mr. Bagby, anything to add before we take a vote?
Yeah, I'll vote against it, and hopefully I'll lose, but I just want to make sure, you know, in the 10 years I've been up here, this is the first time anybody thought that they would get reimbursed for a charitable contribution. And so I can tell you that's never happened probably in Mr. Destin's history, and he's been here longer than all of us. So I would just, I don't understand how we got here, but that's enough.
All right, I got a motion, got a second. Let's take it to a vote. Ayes have it, so moved. All right, Lance, your turn.
Thanks, sir. Item A is the revised procurement policy, which is before the council for consideration. We have Ms. Crystal Strickland here, who's worked on this with our council sponsor, Mr. Bagby. We believe we have a good document for you to consider, and I'll turn it over to Crystal.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. So this procurement policy we have, this is updating the one that we adopted previously in 2019. We're requesting to increase the city manager's amount from authorization amount from $15,000 up to $35,000 for budgeted items, because council adopts the budget and is aware of those things in advance. We are also requesting that he have the discrepancy for up to do internal budget transfers for up to $25,000. And anything over that will be brought to council for approval. And that is pretty much the main differences from the previous purchasing resolution. And with that, I'll let Councilman Bagby speak to any other changes if he wishes.
No, those are the main. I think we had talked about 25,000 for the budgeted amounts, and the main thing is on vehicles, you can't even get a vehicle for less than $35,000, and we already approved the number of vehicles that we're going to purchase. The one big thing, really the biggest change is taking everything to $10,000 will land no matter what the value, but I'm trying to get up here on the paper. Yeah. Taking all the capital purchase items to 10,000, because right now, we're tracking capital purchases that are $1,000, and that is just unwieldy to try to keep track of every, desk set or whatever would cost $1,000. Most businesses, capital is $10,000, and I just think this kind of brings us into 2022 as opposed to keeping us in 1993 for this policy. But I'll gladly answer any questions that Crystal doesn't want to answer.
All right, Ms. Abear.
I move to adopt Resolution 2210, Purchasing Agreement Procedures.
I got a motion, got a second. Mr. Destin?
Thank you, and I support and understand the change. Everything we buy is twice as expensive as it used to be. However, I have one suggestion, hopefully the maker and the second will support, is we have two jobs up here, setting policy and oversight. And I would suggest that we add to this resolution that a list of the purchases shall be made available on our agenda. And that way we don't walk away from our oversight and we can see what's going on, because otherwise we got to dig through mountains of information to come forward. And that's a pretty simple change. And with that change, I would support that if they would incorporate that into the motion.
I will.
I have a question on that.
Yeah, I have a question too. So
Go ahead.
you ask your question first, but it's probably the same question.
Yes, so first I'll make a comment. It is standard practice for boards and councils to receive as an informational item a list of all purchase orders that are issued every quarter or every whatever period you would like. But all purchases, we do thousands of purchases every month. So we just, if we have maybe if you could set a dollar threshold, or maybe just
Why
say.
don't we set the dollar threshold on what the former limits were? What were they, 10 or 15,000? So that should cut it down substantially.
So anything above $15,000 you'd
That-
like to see as an
I
informational
would be good
item?
with that.
Yeah, because the whole purpose of this change in our procurement process is to streamline it.
That's
So-
right, to allow
so-
them to
but-
do it.
But I get your point very well. So basically, you'll be informed of the 15,000 plus ones, but
Exactly.
they can still execute the procurement.
That's exactly the point of what I was
Okay.
trying to get to.
And
Jim, are you good with that?
well, I just want to make sure, do you want that reported as part of the monthly operational finance report, or do you want that as a standalone quarterly report? I'm just,
I would
the
say-
mechanism.
yeah, I would say monthly minimum. I was suggesting that we put it on the agendas every 2 weeks so that we really do get a chance to look at it. If that's too,
You got your,
if that is too burdensome, Crystal,
Currently, we are 2 finance people tracking every penny that comes in or out of the city. So I would request that we just do it once a month with the monthly statements. It'll be an addendum to those.
I'd like to see it as an agenda item. I know I'll see it then. Yeah, once a month will be fine. Thanks.
okay, I'll second once a month in the consent agenda as an agenda item, and then if somebody has an issue with something, they can
Well,
pull that.
We don't need it on consent.
All right.
Got a motion, got a second. Let's take a vote. Ayes have it, so moved.
Next up, we have the building permit fee study update. And if you remember, Ms. Strickland, a year or so ago, set up a new fund for the building division after she schooled me on the statutes that say that, the Florida statutes say that we should and could be recovering all of the associated costs with the building division. And in order to do that and to make it accurate, we needed to have a study conducted. And so we had Mr. Alan Steinbeck do that study for us, and he is here to present the results.
Thank you. Good evening. So I did this assessment as an independent assessment on behalf of the city to come in and look at the fee structure, to look at the revenue projections, the cost projections, and this new standard of accounting that Mr. Johnson just referred to, and to come up with a recommendation for a 5-year update to the fee structure. So that's what's before you. In your packet was included the assessment that we did in the presentation that I'm giving now. Really what must be decided at this point is whether the city will be maintaining its goal of the building division being operated as a self-sustaining enterprise, meaning the fees and the revenues that get collected support the building division activities and don't require transfers in from the general fund. So that is the mindset and the goal that we used in performing this assessment. Decisions that have already been made a priority in the recent past is fully funding and staffing the building division to meet the demands of customers. The budget and the budget forecast reflect this commitment. The building division is down 1 staff person now. There's sort of 1 additional person that's needed. It's historically been understaffed. The community development department has historically been understaffed. So the goal is to get the staff level up to fully funded positions and have those positions be filled. Recently, the council allocated $258,000, almost $259,000 from the general fund to the building fund to make up for a lack of revenue generation relative to the cost and to sort of fortify the building fund on its initiation. So we're trying to come up with a proposal that keeps the council from having to do those transfers in the future. The accomplishments to date include the conforming with the state statutes that Mr. Johnson referred to on reporting and permit activity. What's happened in the finance department now is instituting full accounting of staff and operating costs of the building division activities. And this is very important. It's not just the staff coverage and the operational cost of building officials. It's also the proportional cost of management and administrative staff in the community development department that are included in this new cost accounting. So before, not all the costs were fully accounted for, and now we have this full comprehensive accounting that includes slices of people's time, for example, and also the operational cost have gotten allocated appropriately to the building division activities. So the costs, therefore, as accounted for, are a lot higher than they were before in terms of the accounting of them. The building fund has been established to monitor this, and there's now forecasted costs for revenue and expenditures for the purposes of looking forward 5 years and beyond to try to balance budgets and to make sure that the fees are set appropriately, the revenue comes in to cover the cost of the division's activities. And we've now completed this assessment of these fees for your consideration. The statutory requirements include completing and publishing a building permit and inspection utilization report every year. The city finished its first report earlier this year and published that, so that was the first step in this assessment, was completing that and ensuring that the accounting practices that are occurring in finance are matching up with the permit tracking and accountability that's part of the building division to meet the statutory requirements. One of the things about the statutes is the building funds cannot hold, the fund cannot hold reserves greater than the average of the past 4 years of operating costs. So you can basically have a reserve account within the building fund that's 100% of your annual costs. The city has come nowhere close to that in terms of its building reserve fund, including the money that council put into the building fund recently. So why this decision is important now? The fees were last updated in 2017. That was a minor update. There was a major update in 2015. We're moving into 2023. And so it feels like every 5 years is probably a good time to do a major reconsideration of your fee structure and have them updated. The staffing plan that we have now is designed to meet current and anticipated demands. There's been very strong demand over the past several years and very high activity that has exceeded the staff's ability to handle that demand sometimes. And so this tries to rectify that. The cost of doing business has gone up, utilities cost, and even the future cost to have staff will have to reflect some of the inflation that we've seen over the past couple of years. The building fund balance is forecasted to go negative by 2026 if changes are not made. So we've looked out several years. The finance department did its own forecast in working with the community development department to look out into the future. And if we stay on the track we're on with the structure that we have now, the best case scenario is that the building fund will go negative again in 2026. So there's a reserve in there now, but it's going to de-escalate down to negative territory, requiring either a raising of fees or a future infusion of general funds to meet the demands of the department. There is a risk of permit activity going down. I'm sure you all are watching the economy and what's been going on with it. We have had some very good years in the past, but it's possible that the revenue may plateau or even go down slightly, and this will help mitigate against needing to make cuts in the department if the economy does falter a little bit. And then lastly, fee revenue is not strong enough to build up a reserve. You have a reserve now because you fortified the building fund with general funds, but it's my recommendation, looking at this, to have a policy for a reserve fund because it can be used for other purposes besides just operations. The current forecast shows an escalation of both revenue and expenditures. So the revenue forecast is an aggressive forecast looking out over several years, and the building fund expenditures go up significantly because of that cost accounting, the change in cost accounting, and also the additional budgeting of additional staff to fully staff the department. When you look at the bottom line here, the fund balance that's projected at the end of this year is 420, and you can see that fund balance start going down year over year out to 2025. But when you get to 2026, that's where that fund balance goes negative again. So the way the structure is now, the fee structure, we're losing ground in terms of maintaining that goal of fully funding the department over time. So we've proposed an alternative. This is an alternative that I proposed to the department and the building division that we're bringing to you to set fees to ensure that they're adequate for the next 5 years. Thinking about the future council will have, for 5 years from now, we'll have that periodic 5-year major update to consider. So we're trying to set something in motion now that will keep you all or other councils from needing to come back and raise the fees again, next year or something like that. To plan to build a fund balance of 50% of annual labor and operating costs. The forecast of expenditures do not include any capital costs, either building improvements, equipment, or trucks, or things like that the building division needs to operate. A fund balance would be able to be used for those capital expenditures and those rainy day things that you have to do to keep this facility open, but also the trucks and other things running. And then lastly, the alternative is to raise the review, permit, and inspection fees at least 15% across the board. And I came up with that recommendation by looking at the forecasts and of revenues and fees, looking at those cost accounting procedures, looking at the staff plan, and also a technology transfer that goes from the building fund back to the city to pay a fair share of the technology funds that are used by the building division. Also in the assessment, comparable building permit fee structures of other jurisdictions were reviewed: Okaloosa County, Walton, Fort Walton Beach, and Bay County. Destin has a slightly different way of structuring its building fees. It was hard to create an apples to apples comparison, but even with these increases, you are not markedly out of line with what other communities are doing. Bay County in particular just recently updated its fees, and so we look to that as a benchmark for the city of Destin. This does include other community development department fees, so the proposal that's before you to increase the fees of the department include fees that are not building division fees, just to be transparent. It is looking at the whole department's fee structure to give that 5-year review that I was describing. The fee levels that we set are based on other jurisdictions as a benchmark. I looked at level of effort and staffing and kind of thought about what kind of labor and time would go into these things. And we also looked at trying to increase by increments of $5, $10, or $15 to keep things sort of even. So you're not charging someone a $78 permit fee, it's $80 permit fee, that sort of thing. So the fees that are in the packet, there's go from a range of about 15 to 20% increase. There's a couple that are above 20%, but most of them fall within that range of increase. This slide shows the result of the analysis of the 15% fee being implemented. And if you look down at the bottom there, the fund balance would start at the end of 2023 at almost $500,000 and escalate a little bit up to over $700,000 at the end of a 5-year period. This revenue forecast is, I would describe, a best-case scenario in terms of revenue generation. If there's any reason that that revenue doesn't come in, then you'll be looking at sort of having a flat line in terms of the fund balance, and I would predict that you will not get to that full 600 or 700,000 that's viewed in this slide, given the way things are going in our economy especially. So we looked at the change in fund balance, we looked at escalating costs for the department, and also escalating revenue at that 3% per year. So that 3% growth rate, and there was a step up in the revenue estimates as well for the current to 2023. So it was a fairly aggressive forecast, and even at that 15% level, we're getting so that you're creating a fund balance that does stay within that 50% range of your operating cost of having that in the fund balance. So we have a recommended action before you, which is to adjust these development department fees per the recommendations in the report, and to direct staff to include this fee structure in the next scheduled citywide fee update. This would not be something we're recommending trying to implement immediately. It would be during the normal course of business when you all do your citywide fee update on the next round that occurs. That concludes my presentation.
All right, council members, any questions for our presenter at this time? If not, I'll entertain a motion of the recommendation.
I move to approve the recommended fee adjustments shown in the assessment of building permit fees as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Mr. Braden.
Thank you. Adjusting these fees, was this a statewide, or is this, figure out what people are charging around us locally, or how's that work?
Our main concern in this was looking at the full staffing plan for the city, and ensuring that the city is providing the highest quality and level of service that you all can provide. And I think that's the most important thing in trying to set the fees accordingly, is to have that mentality of high quality of service and to treat it like an enterprise where it pays for itself. We did assess your neighbors, those few jurisdictions. Not everybody publishes them in a way that's fully transparent, so we had a good finding in terms of what we researched, and so we use those as comparables. There is no mandate, state mandate or otherwise, to do this. This is something that of the city's own accord to review and update these fees based on your goals for this division and for the community development department.
The reason I asked, that's been one of my biggest complaints in the last 8 years, was that our city fees, building fees, were more than anybody else's, but it takes twice as long to get a permit from the city. So I'm just wondering if that was based on what everybody else is charging, or just, so what you're saying is based on what it's going to take for the city staff to look at the plans and issue a permit.
Yes, that is absolutely true. And I can appreciate those kind of comments. I've been in this line of business for a long time, and I've heard a lot of people complain about all kinds of local governments and what it takes to get stuff done there. And the number one thing they say is it's just really hard to do business somewhere. You have probably more personal connection to what's on the ground, but when I hear developers talking about these things, they talk about just the difficulty of getting something approved. And I believe that's what's really most important to people is getting that level of service and knowing that there's some reliability. Time is money. And if you're writing a $75 check versus the $50 check, but you're getting that thing done in a timely fashion and getting a good staff that can help you facilitate your way through a process, that is more valuable to you than that $25 that you just, extra $25 that you just spent. And I believe you would find that to be the case anytime if you got somebody and polled them about that. But I do appreciate those kind of comments because the frustration, I think, mostly comes with people who have trouble getting through the system. I would just take a minute to say that the city has had those challenges. The improvements that were made in instituting the new software that's being used has had a major impact on the ability for the division to effectively process things. And we talked about that some during this assessment to make sure that that first phase of effectiveness has been working. That additional staff person and making sure that you stay fully staffed is sort of the next leg up on staying effective and efficient so that people don't have the kind of frustrations that you're hearing about.
I hope so, because if this passes, then their fees are going up, and it's just going to get a lot worse. You know, my fees are going up even higher, and I'm still not getting permits. Or I mean, here, you know, I pulled a permit for a fence, and the permit fee was $300. Everybody else around us, I could have went and got a permit, same fence, for $50 or $75. And I know there's always three sides to every story. But I appreciate your time. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Podesta.
I do have a couple of comments. When I looked at the things that the city charges fees for compared to what the county does, 53 out of 100, the county doesn't charge a fee at all, but we do. So it's not, as you said, and you acknowledge, it's not apple to apple. I think perhaps because we do charge fees for so many more things that the revenue may not be as low as it appears. The other thing I was questioning was we're projecting that we need a 50% reserve. And where did that number come from? Why not a 25% reserve? Where did the 50% come from?
That's my recommendation to you, to have that. It is, it tends to be in the several $100,000 number, which gets you enough money built up to make any sort of capital expenditure that you might imagine. 25% might get you there, but it might not get you to cover those sorts of capital expenditures and provide a backstop against revenue declines and, you know, fluctuations in revenue generation for economic reasons. So if I were just thinking about capital expenditures, I would probably be more in line with that 25% number, but I was also thinking about the possibility, the distinct possibility that you won't have as robust a generation as your forecast indicates. I did not prepare the forecast. That was a staff prepared forecast. And so rather than doing any sort of alternative forecasting or that sort of thing, the more aggressive view of the reserve fund building up relative to that aggressive revenue fund, you're probably not going to reach that 50% number anyway. But I think it is a good goal to have for the reasons that I stated about capital funds plus fluctuation in revenue generation.
Of course, we've had no reserve fund at all in the past, correct?
Correct.
And it's kind of which comes first, the chicken or the egg. If the number of permits that we issue are going down, the cost of issuing them should also go down. So I have a little bit of a problem with that 50% number.
Okay.
And I will make I'll make a substitute in a moment, but I had one other question. It says that the state law says that if your fund exceeds a certain point, certain place you have to refund money. Who do you refund it to?
You are supposed to refund it to the people who paid it, which is an administrative quagmire, honestly, to try to figure out.
Yes, it is. And if your refund is too high, then you're going to get into that quagmire. And I would point out that the legislative history of this legislation from the state seems to point toward what they were trying to curb or curtail was excess fees, not enough fees. And so on the basis of those arguments, I will make a substitute motion that we raise the fees by 10%.
Second.
And then we will review after the end of the year and see how we are.
All right, up next then is Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you. I'm not in favor of the substitute, but I appreciate you bringing this earlier than the rest of them. I'm also excited for the rest of them eventually. You know, the speed at which government runs is very, very slow paced sometimes when you want to change things. And I can go to my local store, they put a sign on the front door that they're increasing their menu prices. I just got to deal with it. So I think we've long overdue for increased fees, but I also told staff today that my goal and my intentions for how the department operates is that sometimes just throwing people at problems or throwing money at people isn't going to always solve the problems. A lot of times it creates more problems. You know, if you're thinking just putting people in positions, we're just going to all of a sudden do better, it's not always the case. So there's a lot of foundational items that I'm really hoping are being prepared and built to mirror higher fees, to mirror charging more for things, because I agree, we should charge more. It should cost more to do certain things around here. And if we are charging more, the customers, buildings, permits, they'll pay it, because then it goes usually to their customer. And, you know, it's a part of doing business, and there's quality of type of business that we want to see. So it's important, I agree, I'd raise them even more if we could, because then we can pay more. Then we won't lose people. Then people will want to come to work in the city of Destin even better. So it's a domino effect to me, ultimately. But the primary important part of that is that we set the department up to not just increase salaries or just put people there, that we truly look at building the department to, mirror the cost of what we're trying to do with these fees. So, if the 50% number is not the number we need to be at, I guess I could understand that. If that's too high, if that is a risk of having too much to then have to refund. But I do know that Crystal and her team, the one other person, they're tracking that very well. I guess the fear would be if Crystal's not here, who's that person that might track that? And then we get in a possible issue. But I don't think she's going anywhere. I sure hope not. And so I don't fear that. I'm not worried about that. What if of having too much, because we're already being told, hey, we need to spend it because we're hitting that threshold. Again, I'm fine with it. The fee increase. I just, again, reiterating to city manager and staff of the importance of, it's not just increase money so we can fill positions and pay people more. There's more to it that than for me at least. So, but I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wagner?
Awesome. Appreciate that, because I'm going to echo a little bit there. Yeah, it comes down to customer service and common sense. And so I'm for the fees being raised. I think this is a great opportunity to take things out of the general fund. And then I guess a question possibly to the department, and not necessarily you, sir. So the one person that we're missing right now, what role is that?
We're missing one additional permit technician.
Permit technician. Okay, and then who is responsible for training new and current technicians?
My permit tech, which we call number 3, who's my highest permit tech. So
Gotcha.
She trains all new incoming. So we just filled one about a month ago, but she's quickly getting brought up to speed. And so this additional one that we hope to bring on board here soon, we are doing an interview, I think hopefully next week. And so if we can get her on board, then we'll be fully staffed. It's just a matter of getting them up to speed, and we can get get some fast-moving pace going.
I understand. And then last one, sorry to put you on the spot. So right now, if I want a fence or a sidewalk replaced, or if I'm doing a major development, are they all going into the same stack, or is there different categories right now?
Well, if you're doing a development, that's a different,
I'm sorry, a larger
a
permit.
roadway, which
yeah.
would be the development order
Yeah, sorry.
process. And then if it's a fence permit or a driveway permit, that's basically the same process.
Got it. So I'm getting at, so I've talked to a lot of people where, even if it's, listen, I'm redoing my sidewalk, I'm not asking for another inch, but it's taking a while to get through things. So, to Councilman Schmidt's point of, I don't want to throw money at it, but there needs to be, working on the process while we still pay the bills. So I was just curious on how we are logically processing these permits at different levels.
Right, I think it's just a matter of the different documentation that may be required, and then sometimes folks don't get all the documentation in, and that's part of the permit text review, is to make sure that the applications are complete. And if they're not, then to reach back out to them, hey, we still need this, and sometimes that can hold them up, so, but we, staff does their due diligence to try to reach out to them to say, hey, you need this, and if they have problems uploading a document for review, they reach out to make sure they can, help them, or just email it to us, we'll get it in there for you and get it going for you, so.
Awesome. All right, I just wanted that on the public record. Thank you so much.
Ms. Aber.
Thank you, Mayor. Kind of reiterating what, Bobby was talking about, the folks that are in your department, for somebody that's getting new windows in their house or adding on a, updated sidewalk, 3 and 4 weeks for something to get through the system. I've had people tell me that it's not that they get any help, like, hey, give it to us, we'll upload it for you. It's like 2 days go by and then they get an email saying, hey, we still need this document. So getting another person, to reiterate what Mr. Schmidt said, we don't want to throw money at somebody that comes in there and they're not working with that customer service mindset. So I wanted as well, just to make sure that when we do get that next person hired, that they do put in that quality of service that we would like to have as a Destin. You come here and you put in a permit, you get it done, and you're not paying more, and it's still taking you longer. So that's the overall goal. And then the other question I had was for you. You said that we had to pull over $200,000 from the general fund to cover, and that would be why we're trying to get this 50% reserve, so we don't have to continue to go back to the general fund. So that 50% would help our city, as far as the building department, not have to reach back to general funding when they're out of money. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
But to clarify, you would not have to do that reach again for several years, given the forecast.
Okay.
That was a one-shot deal that will last several years.
So that's put us at a good spot for the next 2 or 3 years
Yes,
right now?
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it's my turn. So basically, your whole review was to evaluate what it would take for our department to be self-sufficient financially, but also increase efficiency of operation. Is that correct? And this is your recommendation? These are some of your recommendations to make those two things happen?
Yes, the issues about efficiency that have been, the comments made by council are well stated. We did review that, talk about that. My experience observing Destin goes back 15 years, and the turnover rate and the low staffing levels in the community development department have sort of plagued the department, if you will, over the years. And so having that extra money, having a full resource department is going to cut down on turnover, make the place more efficient, for sure.
And not just efficient, but you're talking, the whole recommendation is for a 5-year process, correct?
It is setting something in motion that will keep the council from having to revisit the fees for 5 years. If it turns out, and the reserve is the thing that you can track to make sure that you are on, if it's staying flat, fine. If it's going down very, very slowly, you're probably in good shape. But that's the indicator that I think future decision makers will need to look at to make sure that those fees are set appropriately.
And the line of questioning here for the council is, they've made recommendations, we have a substitute motion, and about our shortcomings, stuff like that, we've revisited all that in the past. I don't think we need to do it here at this particular time. I think I've got Jim and Dewey, you both have your name up here, but I think we're almost at a point where we ought to just go ahead and vote on your substitute motion, or do you have something, do you want to change it?
No, I don't want to change it.
I mean, are you going to change, you've already spoke, you know?
I think we've had,
Go ahead. We've
Yeah.
had one full go at this.
Yeah,
And we have a
well,
lot on the agenda.
yeah,
So
I
I'm just
got it.
trying to encourage us to press along without affecting anybody's thought process
Right.
and/or vote.
Yeah.
Because I think everybody pretty much knows that.
yeah. Well, I just want to make sure we're all dealing with the same fact set, because I'm a little confused by the conversation up here. Number one, Noel, all your positions are fully funded for this fiscal year, is that correct?
They're fully funded, yes.
Okay, and it has nothing to do with what we're talking about up here. So we can talk about customer service and we can talk about personnel strength. That has nothing to do with what you're recommending for this fiscal year, correct?
They're fully funded but not filled, but yes, so, yeah,
They're fully funded.
right, they are in the budget.
That's a
yes,
recruitment
correct,
issue, not
Correct.
a funding issue, is
Correct.
the point that I'm making.
Correct.
Okay, so we're fully funded. The substitute motion, as I understand it, basically says instead of a 15% average increase, we want to do a 10% average increase, okay? Because right now, at the end of 2021, we had a $310,750 fund balance in this fund. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, 310. At the end of this fiscal year that started 1 October, we're projected to have a 420,543 fund balance. Okay, so again, as a fiscal conservative, I'm not sure why we want a big fund balance in something that really isn't designed by the legislature to have a big fund balance. I understand your argument. We might go buy a new computer system, or we might go buy some new software. Okay, bring it to the council, we'll fund that, or whatever. We're not taking anything this year, next year, out of the operating account. Is that correct?
correct.
And we could revisit this annually. We could revisit it more often, but I would say annually when we're visiting our funding, correct?
You, council could choose to do that, yes.
Okay, so we could adjust it annually. Now, you had in your thing, when I went down, I didn't see a single thing at 15%. I saw the adjusted increases were 16.7, 20%, some of them higher than that. And so I'm trying to figure out how we averaged a 15%, or how you say we're averaging a 15% increase. Is that because of the number of tasks that we're doing? The number of permits because when I go through your list,
It's not, the 15% is not the average, that is the model that we use to assess the revenue, just on a high-level, top-line basis.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
so if we say on the top line, instead of, for lack of a better term, a nice technical term that Crystal will like, squirreling away 420,000, we only squirrel away 350,000, the world is not going to end, because that has nothing to do with whether those positions are fully funded. Has zero to do with if those positions aren't fully funded, that's because of our budgeting process, not because of what was available in the fund balance at the end of the year.
But Jim,
So-
I think the whole idea of this is to have a department that's self-funded. That's what the whole
Yes,
purpose of the fee
and I
structure.
agree with that.
So we're getting kind of convoluted here. Do we have enough money for this year in this year's budget? I don't think that's what this whole presentation is about.
Well,
Am I
actually,
not correct?
this whole presentation says at the end of this year, we'll have 420,000 plus. Next year, we'll have 292,000 plus. The following year, we'll have $150,424 plus in this fund, okay? On some conservative estimates, because you think the economy is going to go down, we'll have less permit. So when I look at the voters, I look at them and say, we are being good stewards of the money you give us. That, to me, is the most important thing, which is why I do go through the budget with a fine-tooth comb. Everybody has a different emphasis, but my thing is, are we being good stewards of the money that the public has given us? And I just think if we got $420,000 sitting in a fund balance for one department, we're not being as good as, and 10%, it's not like we're going to wipe out that fund. We're going to only have 350,000 in the fund balance. So
Okay,
that's fine.
point well taken. Mr. Destin, then we're going to take this to a vote. Go ahead, sir.
Biggest complaint that I've gotten the last 2 years since I've been back on this council is the timeliness of permits and the ability to get them. So we are putting the cart before the horse when we do this because, and I'm not opposed to raising it once I see that the permits can get out quicker. And so 10% is a good median to go ahead and give them some more money, but not so much, and we can review it in another year. The other question I have is, does the finance manager monitor this fund so that if we're getting into the area where we have to refund?
Yes, sir, and that's in our monthly reports that I present to council, and it's also in the projections, because I update the projections every month as well.
And so we would lower the the fees at that point?
That's true. And what Alan was alluding to, and he's absolutely correct, the revenue projection that is increasing the fund balance or allowing it to increase, it's very aggressive, and it was taking into account the new turnover rates that we had when we established Compass, and now that we've had nearly a year of experience with that. So that's assuming that our building permit collections increase 25% again next year. So the revenue projection really, it should have been more conservative. And I'm actually, now that we've gotten to the end of this fiscal year, I worry that we're not going to meet that revenue projection next year. But so that's another point that Alan was trying to make here. And the last thing is that fund balance that we have. Yes, you're correct. We are at a fund balance of, I don't have the numbers in front of me. 280,000 of that is because I put money in from the general fund.
Okay.
And we've just gotten started. We're still not accounting. I'm still working on the whole team to account for all of the costs. So there are a lot of costs that are not built in there yet. We're still working to improve our cost allocation processes. So we don't have, for example, the vehicles that the inspectors use. There's some fees or some costs that we haven't yet had time to build in. When we're a finance department of more than 2 people, then there'll be a lot more effort and brains going into that. But this was the best we could do at the moment.
Okay, so the fund balance that's reflected in this document, is that with the 15% or is it just like it is now?
No, the fund balance we have is assuming a very aggressive assumption that we will collect 25% more in permit fees next year at our current existing rates. And does that answer your question?
That's actually not a crystal question.
Yeah, and so you're telling me that this fund balance does not reflect a 15% or more increase in the fees?
That's correct. So the fund balance, the projections that he's presenting assume no change in the fees.
So what would it be if we do institute the 15%?
That's something that takes more than a minute to
And your other
calculate.
estimations, your estimates are the same?
We started the forecast we started the assessment with the forecast that Crystal was alluding to. That is what is at the top line of the base forecast. The 15% fee increase is clearly shown on the table that was in the presentation and in the report. So the base forecast that Crystal was alluding to is the top line of this, which is that 1.195, which is an increase of almost 200,000 from what the city is projected to collect this year.
At the same fee?
So, yes. The 15% addition would be the second line of this slide, which you can see gets you up, almost to additional 200,000 collected. But when you think about the fact that that aggressive step up in revenue that she was alluding to happens that same year, you might have a little bit of a balancing out of those things. It's worth noting for caution that this is an aggressive forecast, the base forecast that's in here. So that's why I felt like the 15% was almost too conservative, given that aggressive forecast. And to Mr. Bagby's points about what's included into what Crystal just said, not all of the full cost accounting that is part of the full cost accounting plan has been recognized this year. A lot of that gets recognized next year, some of it gets recognized the year after that. So, what you see this year happening is not or the recognition of that full cost accounting. Plus, this year's expenditures include not having that one staff person around. So it did have an impact on the expenditure side, not the budgeting part of the equation, but the actual expenditures on the plan. So, really, this year is not the best way to look at what's bound to happen next year and the year after that. It's all planned out, and the cost accounting has a bigger effect on this than the actual adding of the staff member.
One quick question, then I'll be done, Mayor. The money that we have in this reserve fund, I suppose it's subject to the same kind of budget process that we do on our regular city budget?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks, Mayor.
All right, let's take a vote.
10%.
On the substitute motion, Ray, would you like to read that so the council members know what they're voting on?
Substitute motion is to raise the fees by 10% and to review it at the end of the year.
Ayes have it, so moved.
Thank you.
Moving right along.
Very good,
Lance?
sir. Item C is a proposed RFQ for post-certificate of occupancy building inspections. We have Ms. Bell and Mr. Zanguzzi here to brief the council on that item.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. At the last meeting, you authorized for us to move forward with the redesign of the retention basin to be totally underground.
Lewis, we're on C.
Oh, we're on the RFQ.
Oh, sorry, I apologize. Tried to move things along. As you know, because of the tragedy that took place in South Florida, where a condominium building collapsed, the state has mandated that every community require that each of these applicable structures be inspected periodically and that those reports be submitted to the City Council. We have, as you know, been looking at this, and I think at the previous meeting last year, you almost passed an ordinance to begin that process. And I think in your judgment, you said, let's wait and see what the state does. And indeed, the state has now moved, requiring that every community does that. And so what we have for you is that ordinance that will empower our building official to communicate with all the condominium associations in the community that qualify for this to begin that process. And that's what we have before you during the public hearing process. We also had a component to request for an RFQ process because we do not have on staff a specialized engineer to do the reviews for these structures. And so we were hoping to have an RFQ process going to bid so that we can have that specialized person, should we need them, to review and recommend to the city appropriate actions. That's what we have before you.
All right, Mr. Bagby.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to make a motion to table this item until a date uncertain. When you're on the other side of the podium, and I'll tell you why. I probably of all the issues that we're going to deal with tonight, I know this one as well as any of them, because we were the first condominium in Walton County to have our Phase 1 inspection done. It's been completed a couple of weeks. We'll get our report the first week of December, and we've already had our structural integrity reserve study inspection done. The way it's set up, and I first of all, I want to applaud the staff for leaning forward, and I'll support when we do the resolution or do the ordinance, but this is too far ahead of the game. It will be a year, if you understand how this works, first of all, we have to identify all the condo and co-op buildings subject to inspection and notify them by June 30th of 2024. So they will self-notice. We're already working, I think, most everybody, counties, cities are working on that. Then we have to confirm their Phase 1 inspection was complete by 12/31/24. So they have some time to get an inspection. We have to notify them. They can get their inspection before they get notified. Then we have to make sure that the inspection, Phase 1, okay, the only time we will need a structural engineer to review anything is if they fail Phase 1 and they are required to do a Phase 2 inspection, which would be no earlier than 12/31/24. Now, if, say, they were on the ball and they already had their Phase 1 inspection done, and they get their letter, the results in December, then they get a Phase 2, they'll get inspected. It'll take another 2 months because these inspections have to be stamped by a PE or an architect, but every architect I've talked to is going to handle or is going to hire a structural engineer because they're not going to put their stamp on that document saying it is in good shape without the structural engineer. So we're about 2 years probably from needing a structural engineer on staff. The other reason is I know that there will be a glitch bill in the legislative session next year, early next year, and some of the inconsistencies and other things that were in Senate 4D will be worked out, and there may not be a requirement for us to do. There may be a requirement for somebody else to do. I just think we're way too far ahead of the game, and too much is going to change before we actually need a structural engineer. So I'm going to make that motion to table this. And
Okay, all I
just
need
keep
is
it
a
there.
second for this motion, then it'll be tabled. Okay. Lance? Huh? Okay. Here we go.
Well, it does go right to a vote.
On the record, ayes have it, so moved.
Moving on to item D. In my opinion, this is a milestone item. We have made it to 100% roadway plans. This does not necessarily include the recreation components that are yet to be determined, hopefully with help from the Recreation Committee and council's input. But this is 100% of the roadway plans. We have, of course, Mr. Zanguzzi and Mr. Scott here to lead this off.
We also have a presentation by Atkins Consultants here, one online and one here with us.
All right, who wants to go first? Just stand by.
I'm just coming up here to say, JB, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. So thank you for letting us be here to present the 100% design plans to you. The 100% plans were submitted to city staff last week. The 100% plans reflect changes that were directed by council previously, which specifically changed Pond 2 from open drainage to underground retention system. The applications for parcel subdivisions and replatting the right-of-way to designate the roadway from the designated dedicated park property, those items were also submitted last week. Moving forward, we have the PD&E reevaluation, which is near completion, just waiting on input from FDOT to finalize that report. And water management district permits, they have been updated and will be submitted in the following week. So with that, Ryan, I'll give it back to you or entertain any questions.
I'm good. I mean, we still have to come back in front of city council for the flume and for the major subdivision and development order once that time comes about. But for right now, I mean, obviously, property still needs to be bought, so there's still a lot of steps, but the design itself is sufficient and done.
Okay, Louis, that's good?
Yeah, I'm good, unless the city council has questions regarding the 100% set of drawings.
Let's, let's go ahead and entertain a motion, and then go ahead.
I move,
Turn this on. I'll move that we approve the recommended motion with one caveat, and I think it's a caveat that's really not going to make any difference at all and will in fact push us forward to comply with our previous motions. My one change would be that the right-of-way for the crosstown connector that passes through the old Destin Campground property, the city's property, be from the back curb of the roadway, from the back side of the curb of the roadway on either side. What that will do is, that will designate the right-of-way at around 50 feet, which complies with the motions the council made several years ago that it would be a two-lane road. As it is drawn here, it appears that the right-of-way through the park could be more like 90 feet. So that would be my one stipulation. It won't change anything in the plan other than that we designate the right-of-way as that portion from the backside of the curb to the other side, backside of the curb of the actual roadway itself, which is approximately 48 to 50 feet.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second, discussion.
I
Yeah.
just have, I guess, a recommendation. If anything, I think the right-of-way should be to the back of the sidewalk on either side, because it's been in the city code to have sidewalks associated with the roadways. So I would recommend putting the right-of-way at the back of the sidewalk that runs parallel.
Well, the only point I would make is we're putting sidewalks up and down Mountain Drive now outside of the right-of-way, and the object of making the right-of-way this particular size was to make sure and assure that it would be a two-lane road.
Understand.
And not a four-lane. And
Understand.
so I would be much more comfortable if we did that. And like I say, we've got sidewalks outside right-of-ways all over the city. Matter of fact, we're requiring them all up and down Mountain Drive now.
Okay, I
I
just
think
wanted
as
to let
you're
you
aware.
know. Yep.
That doesn't
I
change.
can,
Go ahead.
I can offer clarification on those widths. The proposed right-of-way is 40 feet for the roadway, and that accounts for, on the typical section sheets, we show those measurements. But placing the proposed roadway right-of-way along the back of curb provides for 40 feet of total roadway right-of-way. Everything else will be dedicated to parks.
And when I'm looking at section 3, we have the roadway right-of-way, plus we have the other proposed right-of-way line on either side of the roadway. But if we are clarifying, and you are clarifying that the actual right-of-way is the footprint of the road, then we're both marching toward the same object, it looks like.
Agreed. Yes, the outside right-of-way lines you are seeing, those represent the actual limits of the old campground. So that parcel, that would be the extent of the city park right-of-way.
Well, in that case, my motion hasn't changed anything, has it? It just makes us very crystal clear, so I would leave it as part of the motion.
Okay, second? Yes, second. All right. Okay, so we have motion and a second. Stay right where you're at, just in case we have any other questions. I've got a couple of people that want to speak, so Ms. Abear.
it was answered with Mr. Destin's
Okay.
question.
All right. Mr. Bagby?
I just want to thank y'all for getting this back to us so quickly. Ryan, I'm sure you had some help in that, but I really appreciate all the work we've done and that we're now here. Thank you.
Mr. Schmidt?
Can you repeat the motion for me again, Ray? Please? Or Mr. Destin, whoever it is.
Okay, it's a recommended motion. Would you like me to read the whole thing?
Whatever
Okay.
the recommended motion is.
Direct the city manager to approve the following: 100% design plans, 100% landscape plans, continue with remaining tasks 1 through 6 as outlined. Direct the Parks and Recreation Department to coordinate the design of the park facility for the Crosstown Connector in conjunction with the city engineer and the Parks and Recreation Committee, and bring back design for council's review. And an added caveat, and I'm not sure if this is accurate, but the right of way for the city that passes through the back side of the curve from the actual roadway on either side. Is that it?
Correct. That's fine. I didn't know if he was going exactly as it was recommended there. I just wanted to make sure. I just wanted to add on the public record, though, that the design implements that are on some of these slides are not the full plan in regards to the parks and things like that. That these are just
Yeah, that's.
somebody decided to put that
that's-
particular idea on a slide in the
That's
packet.
in item 1 through 6.
Yeah, so I put together kind of just a
Right.
first step conceptual, just to, I
Completely
want to get
conceptual, though, right?
excitement going, start talking about
Right.
what we want. So these are just a
Item
couple quick
4 on the
ideas, yeah.
motion is what's going to help design those sections. Is that
Correct,
right?
correct. So this is kind of a starting point for that part of the project.
Gotcha. I just want to make sure in the public record that that's not really the starting point, because those particular items that are mentioned on that particular map is not what any of us says.
No, it's just
Okay.
an idea to get the conversation rolling.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Last, Bobby Wagner, and then we'll go ahead and take it to a vote.
No, that was it. I appreciate you guys.
All right, thanks. All right, let's take it to a vote. Thank you. What a good way to go out. All righty. Oh, yeah, we still got design park. All right.
All right, item E, we have our quarterly code compliance update by Ms. Kimberly Corbin. I will say Kimberly came on board right at the height of the season in the middle of July and spent her first 4 months in probably the most challenging 4 months that Destin experiences every year. So kudos to her for making it through there. She's going to cover the quarterly report items, and then we did ask her to give us the ideas she has for moving this department forward.
Good evening, council, and thank you for your patience in waiting for this report. I know it's long coming, and it's almost a month past, so thank you for that. I want to start off by pointing the slide. The perception of code compliance. A lot of people think of code compliance in many different ways. Some people think of us as firefighters. We're out there putting out fires, we're running back and forth all over town. Another perception that people have of code compliance is we're police light. We handle things that in some jurisdictions are handled by law enforcement, and we handle those. Some of those are trespass issues, it may be parking, it may be noise complaints, things like that. Sometimes we're even perceived as being the dog we're going to sick on our neighbor, or the dog we're going to sick on another business that another department may be having issues. If they don't come into compliance, don't worry, we're going to sick code on you, essentially. So I'm trying to change that perception. We are code compliance, and we have a job to do. We want to make sure that the city of Destin keeps its property values up. And what are the challenges we face? We face challenges, short staff, and I think you've heard that. That seems to be a running theme tonight. We're one of those departments that we've had shortages pretty much ever since I've gotten there, and you knock on wood anytime we say we're fully staffed, because just about that time somebody's turning in a resignation. Being fully staffed in code, I think knowing how many we have in the office, we have 9 when we're fully staffed. 6 of those are code officers, and we have 1 administrative assistant, we have 1 deputy director, and we had 1 director. Having a full staff, still with running a 7-day-a-week operation, if anybody's out sick, anybody's on vacation, I'm still lucky if I have 1 person working that particular shift. So I think the premise is that we are tripping over each other. There's so many of us out there, we're everywhere. And for the 70 miles approximately of city paved roadways and 140 miles of right-of-way, those numbers aren't nearly enough to accomplish what we'd like. But we're fortunate, we have 6 vehicles, we have 1 boat and 1 gator as part of our materials, supplies, and resources. The ordinances are pretty much our tools. We work with ordinances. We need stronger ordinances. It's been spoken about over the past few meetings that we need more teeth to ordinances. And this is lucky year because we are working with Lewis's office and trying to update some of the ordinances, trying to catch up to where they probably need to be, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later. One of the things that we do is handle reducing, and I'm not sure if there's ever such thing as eliminating, but that's always a goal, to eliminate unpermitted and unlicensed activity in short-term rental, long-term rental, livery, and of course we also handle building inspections or not building inspections, but the building permits that are either applied for, never retrieved, but the work got started anyway, so we go out there for those types of violations. Signs in the right-of-way, that goes back to those 70 miles of roadway. As soon as you remove one sign, 3 have magically appeared in its place. It's a unique phenomena. Safety issues, we handle parking, of course, visibility triangle issues, sanitation issues, and our noise complaints we handle through the sheriff's office. Generally, we get calls from citizens and or dispatch at the sheriff's office. And we handle, of course, we work with the LDC on collaboration of issues with defining and interpreting some of the laws that come about. We want to make sure it fits what we're doing and if we need to add to that. We've been trying to encourage the public to use the help desk tickets. It's an excellent way to monitor the complaints. That is one of the key functions because it's not just our office that sees the help desk tickets, it's also the city manager's office that also receives those types of complaints. We want to keep the lines of communication open with staff, but we also want to keep it open with the citizens. We want to let them know that we've received the complaint. We want to give them the case number and the avenue, the link to Compass or Intergov to research the case themselves also. Our strategic plan objectives is another key function. This is the time of year where we're starting to make sure that our key objectives are short-term and livery, and we want to include the International Property Maintenance Code as one of our strategic plan objectives we're working on. These are the quarterly reports. The quarterly report is for the third quarter. It is a calendar year quarterly report, not a fiscal year quarterly report, and it is for the service calls that were received. I'm using it kind of as a baseline because I don't have a lot of reference prior, but I started in July, and this is a good time to be starting for me to be able to use this for future quarterly reports. And just to give you a little sneak peek, October has 491 cases that were opened in just the month of October. So one of my goals is changing how the code officers are entering complaints. Make a case for every single call that comes in, and that way, if it's unfounded, we'll have photos, no matter if it's unfounded or not. We want to just be able to have a case to refer back to. Even if it is unfounded, we can refer back to that address and say, yes, we have had a complaint here. It might have been unfounded that time, but it's a pattern of a problem at that particular address. And then, of course, it's always fun to see it on a bar chart. Some people are better at looking at the numbers one way or the other, so I've given you both options. And one of the things we were talking about just a moment ago is having every complaint come in and assign a case in Intergov Compass. And we have been working with the land use attorney, Kimberly Kopp, about increasing the number of hearings that we have. We were having 1 hearing a month. We've now increased it to 2. It should give enough time with changing compliance times and the time frames. That may seem like it's not exactly a necessity, but it really is because some complaints didn't get in violation overnight, so they do need more time. But other complaints can come into compliance in a shorter amount of time, and so giving them a shorter compliance window. And you don't want to be locked in to say 30 days when it probably could have been resolved in a weekend. So having the ability to go to a special magistrate hearing twice a month gives the opportunity to take the case to a hearing rather than letting it languish for another month. If you've missed the cutoff for this hearing, you've got to wait till next month. This way you could have it every 2 weeks. We want to be training with the code officers. We've got a lot of new code officers. I say a lot because when you have 6, I've got 2 new ones, and I should have another one starting in the next week or 2. But having them also have training sessions with Kimberly Kopp, and she would help, and we actually have one of those trainings coming up this week. And we want to work on the effectiveness of our night staffing. When it's not season, how necessary is it to have them working through till midnight? We work right now from 6 a.m. until midnight, 7 days a week, and we want to make sure that we have the staffing where we need the staffing. And I've mentioned about increasing the teeth in the and working with the LDC consultant. Sometimes we want to make sure that we're increasing teeth where it needs to be increased, but also we don't want to use, when we have such a high tourism rate and people that aren't familiar with the laws and rules, you know, you hammer them and they first walk in the city, they may never want to come back. And you want them to come back, they need to be educated. And part of that education can be a warning. Sometimes a phone call is a warning, and the next time would be a monetary citation. So there's discussions being had there. The preparation of the International Property Maintenance Code is the code that we're going to bring in the grass height into the ordinance, and we're working on that. But each officer needs to be certified in the International Property Maintenance Code through the International Code Council. Having that credibility or that certification behind them, I think, gives them credibility in the field. They're not just somebody that got the job and took a couple of weeks course. It is an important test to pass in order to enforce that. We're working on the standard operating procedures, the SOPs. The city has had them, and we're working on it through each position and for the entire department. We're revisiting all those. They've already been written. Now it's a matter of just reviewing them through the process. Every jurisdiction, and I say every, both jurisdictions, Citrus County and Savannah, had contractors, and having a contractor to mow, and we have for boarding and securing, and we had it for unsafe structures. We had a separate contractor for each that was available to take care, resolve the complaint in a timely manner, and a lien put on the property if it wasn't taken care of. So looking to that as an avenue, if you've got a property owner that may be out of state or infirm and can't take care of the problem, the city, the thing we want to avoid is we don't want to become the lawn maintenance business for somebody that just isn't getting their lawn mowed. So there is things to look at. There are sides that you want to look at. But having another, I say, tool in the toolbox to resolve a complaint, get the complaint resolved in a shorter amount of time. I would like to hold a swearing-in ceremony with the new mayor when he's sworn in, and it gives each code officer, even ones that have been there, we've had some that have been there for 5 years, we've had some that have been there for 3 years, 1 year, and now we've got a couple that have been there for a couple of months. But even once they've passed the FTO program, which is the Field Training Officer Program, I would like them to have a ceremony and recognize the importance of the job that they're doing by having a ceremony to swear them in. We want to reevaluate the 7-day-a-week operation, especially during the off-season, maybe put them on call, making it where we can respond if necessary, but if we want to just evaluate the complaints after dark, which I mentioned earlier. We're revamping the waterway and harbor position, and we are learning what works and learning what doesn't work. We hope to learn even more tomorrow. We have a meeting with the stakeholders, and we have a meeting with the Coast Guard on Thursday. So we're also working towards having that meeting after the first of the year that we had talked about having for the harbor position. We're going to work with IT on the migration for Compass. To put it in the cloud. I think that's going to eliminate some of the parts about being able to put multiple violations in one case, and things like that should be resolved in this migration that's going to be going on probably around February of 2023. In the last thing I've mentioned here is the super goal. And the reason I call it a super goal, accreditation of the Code Compliance Department through the American Association of Code Enforcement. The reason I call it a super goal, I thought it was going to be this, hey, let's get this done. There's 45 criteria that we have to meet, so it's going to require a lot of hands-on and working with the land use attorney to make sure we have ordinances that match what we need to accomplish, that fit our SOP. Everything has to match. They want photographs, they want proof of everything, copies of everything. So it's a very in-depth accreditation process, which is good because you don't want it to be just, here's my $250 and I'm accredited. You want it to be something that you know you've earned. And so that's one of our super goals. And the road vessel plan is something that I mentioned a little bit ago about having a meeting starting tomorrow morning. We've got stakeholders meeting that we will have some of our code officers, but we have some of the community development office staff that may be attending as well. We will be having the meeting with the Coast Guard on Thursday, and we're going to be having training with Kimberly Kopp on Thursday afternoon. We are also working, and part of that strategic plan objective is the STR plan, the short-term rental plan. We are wanting to make sure we're looking at timelines of when they register, and we're looking at are we allowing too much time, not enough time? Does it fit with how the short-term rentals are being registered? And we have a lot that have registered late, so we're trying to get them all. We're going to be sending postcards this year in January, so we have a lot going on with the STR program as well. The main thing, I can list all these things that seem like wonderful ideas in my head, but I need to know what this council's priorities are. So if y'all have ideas of what your priorities are and want to discuss it or plan it for a future meeting, just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you much. Don't go away. I see a few folks that want to make some comments or ask you some questions. I appreciate your presentation because really you came in during the peak of summer. We haven't got to see you much or hear from you much. It's nice to hear from you and start a dialogue with this council on where you take this department between now and when all hell breaks loose Memorial Day weekend. So, Ms. Abear, you're first.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Kimberly, for coming and giving us this presentation, and I'm glad to see that you're very keen on getting all of your folks fully trained and squared away to what they need to do. I'm also glad to hear that you're working with Kim on, a lot of the land use stuff, especially when it comes to the ordinances and a lot of the issues that are land issue problems, that you can get good guidance from her. My one question is, I noticed that there is a lot of issues that happen on Holiday Isle, and I don't know if that area has like a coordination with their HOA and your compliance guys, if there's a way that you can partner with them to be like a helping hand to getting things from large weddings that are popping up illegally and other issues that happen over there on a daily basis, on capturing some way of, I don't know, not assigning someone there full time, but pretty much having that relationship where you would be able to be more proactive versus reactive when it comes to those. Do you have a thought for that?
We would be glad to work with their homeowners association, the HIIA. We have done a public speaking with them a couple of months ago, and we'd be glad to work with them.
Do you already have contact? Are you already working, communicating with them?
We have. I was a guest speaker with them a couple of months ago at their meeting. So we'd be glad to work with their association.
I think they got problems of their own at the moment. Apparently, with the calls we're getting, they're not very efficient at what they're supposed to do as an HOA. Mr. Braden. I'm entitled to it, just like yours, ma'am. Go ahead, Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. One thing you said, that your officers would go out and look at jobs without permits, or work being done without permits. I'm just curious of why your officers are doing that when they really don't know what they're looking at when they go to a job. Just what work needs a permit, what work doesn't need a permit. Why are they doing that?
We coordinate with the building official. She gives us places to go that she is aware of, that stop work orders need to be done. So if they need a permit, we're in communication with her, and we send photographs if she needs to see them or if she has not been out there.
So I asked this question because there was a complaint on a property on Azalea that was working on a permit. One of your officers went out there and then came back and said, yeah, they got a permit. Well, they did have a permit. They had a roof permit. They didn't have a building permit. I think they had an electrical permit. They were building stuff inside, outside. Case was closed. Well, it was reopened because the complainant called again and said, no, yeah, they got a roof permit, but need a general contractor out there. So that's my question, is why are they out there looking at something that they have no idea what they're looking for?
We could certainly use more training, I'm sure. In construction, my guys are not building inspectors. Most of them have all different backgrounds, but definitely we don't traditionally get any building inspectors or even people with a building background. The International Property Maintenance Code certification will help because it does, the part of the testing is out of the International Residential Code, and it's out of the legal aspects of code administration, and it's out of the Property Maintenance Code book. It's not a very thick book, but I think that will help, and being involved with that International Property Maintenance Code will help in that regard. But we will always defer to the building department because they have the building official and building inspectors. And then if we need someone from the community development side on development orders, things like that, we defer to them.
On a project like that, why wouldn't, when the officer goes out there and sees that there's work being done and they're almost building a whole building, why wouldn't he go back and say, look, there's a lot more going on out there? You know, I'd feel more comfortable with an inspector going out there, somebody from the building department. I mean, I can see that there's a guy building a fence.
I'll need more information, like an address and what transpired. I'm not familiar with the specific information you're referring to, but if you want, I can look into it and get back with you.
Louis, would you like to weigh in on this? Because this is almost a question, is like, why are we sending code enforcement out there on a building issue? And are we even supposed to be doing that? Go ahead and let me know.
Yeah, because it's part of the land and development code that, you know, you got to have a permit prior to construction. But to clarify, I have also since made sure I've given Kimberly my cell phone number to give to all her deputies, all your guys, so that when we do request that they go out there and check, to call me, FaceTime with me, so I can visually see myself in addition to them, and then I can come to a better conclusion of what's going on and whether a stop work is warranted. So we've kind of cleared that issue up, I believe, going forward.
Mr. Braden, that's a valid question. She did ask for guidance on our priorities, so maybe that might be one of your priorities you want to emphasis on.
I know we had it on the house on Holiday Isle at the end. There's a whole lot more going on out there, and I don't know if the code guy was going back and forth, whatever, so it's not something that just happened, you know, last week. We've been dealing with it for quite some time. One thing is, I know the council approved several months ago that I was wanting someone on the harbor, that the harbor district was their baby. The boardwalk, everything in the harbor district. They live, eat, and breathe that. Well, I don't know if, I'm trying to find out if that just, and I even met with the city manager in his office and some other staff, and he's like, you know, what is it you want that you're looking for? And that's exactly what I said. I want somebody down there living, eating, breathing that harbor district, the boardwalk area. I don't know if that just went in one ear and out the other, or if it just went out the window or what, but when I did a public records request for what was going on in your department from October 1st to 9th, one of the emails was, officer walked the boardwalk, and his comment was all good. I can promise you that I could walk that boardwalk, same walk he did, and I could give you enough to keep you busy for at least a year on things that's going down there. So there's no way he's wasting his time, doesn't know what he's looking for. It's not his job description. Well, I don't know what he's doing, but anyway, that's what I was looking for at the time. And to see that email that, I walked the boardwalk and all good. I don't get it. So I'd like to, still here after tomorrow, I'd love to look at that again or meet with you on that and find out what's going on. And I've been asked by several people that, the comments made that we're a complaint-driven department, but, for an officer to go sit in our paid parking lot and look at tags and see if they're paid or not, and writing all these citations, whatever. Nobody complained about that. He took that on his own. So where does that stop at as far as complaints and no complaints? I don't know. I guess I could go all night on it.
Well, it is in my presentation about reevaluating the harbor position. That officer is not doing the harbor position any longer. I am making it an assignment essentially for all my code officers to walk the harbor. So it's not going to be one officer. It's going to be everybody at Joe's Bayou, everybody on the harbor that's working. That is part of their route, essentially. So it's not one officer anymore. We can't pull anybody over from the boat. Our best asset is feet on the ground, on the harbor, or at Joe's Bayou, or any one of our city docks. So we are going to be pursuing it that way. But that's also, I mentioned about having the meeting this week, we are going to be educating the officers more for that. So it's not a dead issue, it didn't go away, it's how we're revamping each officer's roles. And we're not having one officer just assigned to the harbor.
Okay.
We want to make sure that they know what they're doing and they know what they're looking for on the harbor.
Okay, thank you. Another thing can't wrap my head around, because I've pulled these public records requests and I've looked at what they're doing, and it's just not adding up to me. And I really have because all I've heard was, code compliance or code department we're just overwhelmed. We're just a tremendous amount of calls, and we're just overworked. I don't know what they're doing, but like I say, the emails, the codes that I looked at, when I pulled everything that was done in that code department for a week and a weekend as well, there was 4 or 5, the boat guy gave out, a handful of warnings. There was several parking citations given, with the guy could have went to a parking lot and spent 20 minutes, wrote several of those up. Parking in Crystal Beach, and a handful of other calls. And we're talking from October 1st to October 9th, 9 days. And I really don't, and another thing I can't wrap my head around is why did you spend so many hours and so many resources, and you had a meeting where you pulled 5 department heads together to find out or determine whether you should write a citation for a garbage can violation or not? If we're struggling with a garbage can citation, or whether we should pull all those resources and time and the city manager and attorneys and all, how are we going to get to the big complaints? I just don't understand how that happened, or why that took so many man hours and, I don't know, a week, 10 days talking about it. My opinion is, and you tell me if I'm wrong or what you thought it was, but if you have a question about it, you go to the attorney, or maybe the city manager and then the attorney, and if they say, yeah, write it, I interpret it that way, write it, that'd been the end of it. If you're so bogged down and got so many tremendous phone calls and all, I wouldn't have time to spend the hours and resources and pulling 5 department heads together to try to determine what I'm going to do about a trash can. If I'm that busy, I'd have wrote it and moved on, especially if my attorney tells me, I can support it, write the citation. I'm the one that's got to go in front of the magistrate. So can you elaborate on that any?
And I'll defer to the city manager.
I mean, that's your department. I mean, you had trouble determining whether you want to write a citation or your officer write a citation about a trash can violation or not. That's our code. I mean, I can know that you maybe interpret it different.
That is a very true story right there.
Right.
It's a different interpretation. That's why I'm going to defer to the city manager.
Okay.
We worked through the issue, and I think we landed where we needed to land on it. I'm not saying
Why did it take a week, 10 days, and so many man-hours to determine what we're going to do about a trash can citation or code?
Like most things here in the city, things are never as simple as they seem. There were other factors involved out there other than garbage cans. And I wanted to make sure that I was not creating a liability on the city. That's all.
It was my understanding that the attorney had determined that long before that. So if, that brings us to the next one. When do we start picking and choosing when we're going to enforce a citation and when we're not, and when we're going to hold somebody accountable and when we're not?
We don't pick and choose, I can assure you.
So,
We enforce the code if it applies to the property.
so the email that I received from Jeremy that was in this stuff that I received from your department says that he went out there and issued warnings, but the city manager, Lance, told somebody prior not to issue a citation to Club LA. Why are we not issuing citations to Club LA?
I'm confused. Are we talking about garbage cans or Club LA?
Oh, we're moving on.
Okay.
Let me answer that, because I think that I'm probably the only one that was around when that originally took place. So I know the email you're talking about, and I like Jeremy, but he was getting secondhand information, and it says that, I think, in that email, that he was told by someone else that that's what I said. Well, I did say something along those lines for a specific date and a specific event, because I wanted to have a chance to get the manager of that facility with the manager of the facility just to the south of there, so that we could work something out, because Club LA has been around forever and ever. They're a good organization, they're a good business, and they've held concerts there since way before I came around here. And I think that there was never a five-star facility just to the south of there before, and now there is. And so I wanted a chance to try to at least have staff or myself or someone get out there and work with those two organizations to come to an agreement. I think that for the most part we have, and that is, we try to abide by the 10 o'clock rule out there. And they need to shut the thumping down about 10 o'clock, and I'm probably going into more detail than I need to, but I hope I'm answering your question. What he said wasn't false, but it was for one particular incident, and it was not a carte blanche, I want this to happen forever.
Well, it sounded like the email he was asking, and I've been out there multiple times, and the warnings just aren't happening anymore.
Well, I think we're getting away from the code compliance report, and some of the things you're bringing up, Mr. Braden, probably need to meet with our department head and share those concerns, maybe even with our city attorney. But we got to be careful about airing out dirty laundry or issues that may get us, in some type of legal problem. Kyle, I just want to be cautious here.
I agree, and she's given us her plan, and I'm trying to figure out, in her plan, how we're going to change from what we've been doing, because we're working with some people, trying to get things worked out between people, neighbors and whatever. So
Right.
are we going to work with everybody, or?
Yeah, I don't think this is the time and place to have that discussion. I think probably need to talk with her more about how she plans on executing it. And then
That's her plan.
these are conceptual for her. She's been on the job for 4 months. So I don't know, is it a classic case of let's give her time, or she asked for our priorities? If these are your priorities,
I would
maybe not.
say the priority would be to enforce the codes that the council approved and adopted.
Well, there you go. You just did it.
Why is that so hard?
Well, it's not, I mean, I don't know, walk a day in her shoes, maybe that'll help.
Apparently it
others.
is.
Maybe that help. I'm not trying to be argumentative
Right.
here. I just want to say, she's got a report, she's got a plan. Is it a question of how are you going to execute this plan? Or are we going to get into individual incidents that have already been filed and put on the thing and complaints and stuff like that? I just don't think this is the time and place for that part. So,
Like I said a minute ago, that's everybody's opinion.
right.
You know, we're the time and place.
I'm
She's
just
giving us a plan.
You know,
not
I'm the
time.
chairman of the meeting. I'm trying to proceed this thing along. She's giving her presentation. We have a lot of other stuff on the thing, and you've made some valid points. I just don't think we ought to get into the micromanagement of the code enforcement department at this time, is all I'm saying. But you have the floor. I'm
So
going to give you
is
that
she-
respect,
are
so
you
press
not
on.
asking for any type of direction or anything?
Can I chime in for just a
Yeah,
sec?
yeah.
I just want to go back to the last slide that she showed. The very last item on there was asking for council's opinion, and that's what she wants. The problem is there's not enough resources to enforce every code we have on the books. And that's why she's asking, where do you want the team to focus? And that's what she's asking for, and I think we can do that one-on-one. We can also do it at our upcoming visioning session. We can hold a workshop if that's what you all want to do, and we may need to do that because there's limited resources. She's doing the best she can with what she's got, but at a certain point, she needs guidance on where to send the resources when there's multiple things that she could attack, so.
And all I'm saying is tonight's not the night for case study. Okay? So that's all. I mean,
I'm just bringing up things that's happened in the past so we can know how we're going to fix it moving forward.
Yeah, that's fine.
If she's wanting
You still-
directions, from the council, then, of where we want to prioritize things, well, bring us something back that says, look, I've got, 5,000 trash can calls a day, or I've got 5,000 parked cars.
Dad, I think what would be a good idea to help facilitate what you're getting at, Mr. Braden, is let her give her a list of what she thinks the priorities of the council are and bounce them back off us, and we make a list of what the priorities of this council are in a working order. And so that's what they pay the most amount of attention to, not to say that other things get ignored, but you got to start somewhere. And she's 4 months on the job, and she's given us a presentation up to this point of what's been going on, what she's going to try to do, and then she wants to hear our priorities. So if your priority is making sure we enforce the ordinances as written, well, that's priority number one. That's a start.
Thank you.
Mr. Schmidt.
All right, thank you. Appreciate the presentation. I first want to start with what Lance just said
Okay.
about some of the comments he said about individual meetings, this and different ideas he shared. My issue with that is then we're individually meeting with you, telling you what we want individually. I think that's a horrible idea. I don't recommend you meeting with us individually so I can tell you how I think you should do your job, and then she tells you how you should. Because now you got to pick who you want to listen to, and that's just a disaster waiting to happen. So I highly encourage you not to do that. It's up to you, though.
Do I get a choice?
Well, I mean, sure, they want to meet with you. I usually go through the city manager before I meet with
Absolutely.
staff members and make sure he's
Absolutely.
aware of it, but I would be cautious of meeting with us and trying to get this discussion going, because this is kind of why you are here right now. And I know Ronnie's going down different rabbit holes maybe, but this is why you're also here. Unfortunately, it is a busy agenda night, and unfortunately, it is the mayor's last night, but this is why you're here. And some of these are issues that we've been just beating down on the table for 2 years. I get you've been here for 4 months, so that's why it's that important, because you're here now. And you're here now, so that's why we're going to take all the time we feel necessary. And I know you're not saying not to.
No.
You're
I'm
not.
definitely not.
I'm just reiterating that.
And having 6 officers that have varying stages of taking no pictures, opening no cases.
Right.
To just.
I'm with you, but
pulling
you
out.
said we have some officers
Yeah,
that have been here for
we
5
have a
years?
lot. We have a
5
lot.
years, right? Somebody's been here for 5 years?
Billy.
Billy's been here for 5 years.
Yep.
I would expect almost perfection from him if he's been here for 5 years. We've had a co-director who was a previous co-director, who was a new anyways, you started off by saying the perception of code compliance department. And what I have possibly missed, maybe I didn't hear it from you, is what is the perception that you're wanting from the code compliance department? And maybe you kind of hit on that. I didn't get it clearly.
I want us to be able to enforce the code as it's written for property owners in the city of Destin.
Gotcha. Okay. There's an item on your presentation about reducing / eliminating, what you said eliminating is near
Eliminating.
impossible, unlicensed activity.
Mhm.
What is, can you give me one thing on how we're going to reduce unlicensed activity in your department?
We are going to train our officers on things to look for unlicensed
Right, so
contract.
training.
Unlicensed activity in
Okay.
STR, unlicensed in livery,
Okay.
unlicensed in lawn.
So would you say then that the training that they've received for 1 to 5 years is just
haven't-
garbage then?
I would say almost non-existent on livery.
Right.
On,
And who's responsible for that training?
well, responsible for, as in
Director?
who's giving the training or who recommends? the
I guess let me
training?
ask you now, like, who's going to be responsible now for giving the training? Let's just, I guess, go that way, so moving forward.
Our land use attorney is the one that gave the one in the previous quarter, and she will be giving the one this quarter,
On what?
livery and road
Right.
operations.
It's okay.
Let me just answer that,
I-
because you're asking a question from before she was here, in part. In the past, I felt that there was not enough training of the code enforcement officers in general. So recently, within the past year, I talked with Lance, and Lance and I, and actually Lewis, all talked about meeting as a group with the entire code compliance department to train them on specific big issues that they were having trouble with. So we started that, and all of us have been meeting with them probably, has it been a year?
Right, so take out livery vessels. Who's training on how to be a code compliance officer?
The field training officer is Danny Sullivan.
So Danny Sullivan, he's the one that's been here for 5 years?
No, he's been here for 3 years.
Okay, and he's training people on how to do the job that's not currently being done really well?
Well, I mean, everybody is doing it, but they weren't putting cases or a lot of
So
cases.
why is Danny training people instead of you as the director of code compliance?
Well, he's over the officers, I'm over the department. I'm doing the strategic planning and writing ordinances or writing with.
So do
looking
you
at
have
the
enough
ordinances.
faith and you know?
I do.
In Danny Sullivan?
I do.
To train the officers of your department? Because it's your department, right?
It is my
You're in
department.
charge of
Absolutely.
everything.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Danny is. The quarterly report, thank you for giving some of this. And I don't know for sure if you were here when this first got requested in recent time. Maybe, it might have been right at the beginning or,
I think it was probably part of a Zoom meeting. It
Sure.
might have been over a Teams meeting.
I believe, and I can go back and look again about the intentions of what I think we were also wanting, I believe was a little bit more detail about where the reports came from, were they called, were they online, getting a better understanding. I'll have to go back and listen as well, but rather than just seeing the
Numbers.
number. I would like, and again, it's not about individually, but I will give you my priorities here in a minute, but I can go back and listen what the idea was at that meeting, but I believe it was a little more detailed.
Okay.
For example, pay to park versus parking violations. I believe pay to park would be if you're in a lot but you didn't pay.
Correct.
And then a parking violation would be people that are parked illegally,
In the
right away,
Could be right away, it could
blocking
be
a sidewalk.
Correct.
Gotcha. And how do we choose, kind of what Mr. Braden was saying, to violate parking violations in Crystal Beach, but not on Cypress and Kellaire Drive? Where are we getting a parking violation from, most likely, you think? Is it
Short-term rentals.
so
The majority of them are short-term.
somebody's calling?
Yes, but the
and-
one on Kellaire was not a call-in, he found it himself.
What's that?
The parking violation on Kellaire.
Oh, I wasn't even going to get to that
I
one.
thought you just said
I just
Kellaire.
randomly picked a street in
Oh,
Kellaire,
okay.
but yeah,
That was the one
too close,
we-
too close for comfort. You're right.
We just,
Mars Street on the Mayors, you know. But so they're coming from short-term rentals, meaning somebody's calling or what, like a neighbor?
Yes,
Like a neighbor in Crystal Beach is sending off
Correct.
violations somewhere.
Correct.
And you are going out there. Okay. Well, if I look at approximately 900 calls in the quarter, approximately 90 days, we're talking about 10 to 12 code responses a day? And how many officers are working during the day?
usually one or two,
One or two?
and then one or two at night.
Okay. And so I've never been in that department, never been in that job, so, you know, I don't know exactly what they do all day, every day, but that's the job they're doing. So is that bogging them down?
I think you are correct. There's a lot to do. There's picking up signs. They're doing other things. They're not just answering calls. They're looking at the rechecks of places that they were at to see if compliance was achieved.
Follow-ups and stuff.
Correct. So it's
Gotcha.
not just one thing,
Okay.
and,
Not just the violations.
correct.
Got it. The magistrate going to 2 times a month, when does that take into effect?
This month,
This
November
month?
29th.
And we're starting that as like a permanent change moving forward?
Yes. If we have cases to be heard.
Right.
If we don't have any
We're
cases, there
not-
won't be any.
Yeah, that makes, I like that. What is, as a director, how do you see your position? Obviously, you just said like Danny Sullivan's over the field officers. Are you going out into the field? Are you the last, how do you see yourself
I
as a
go out in the
director?
field as well, but I am usually the overseer of what complaints are coming in. I review complaints to determine if a response has been given.
Okay.
I review the help desk tickets to see that responses were given on those. I've been interviewing, I feel like I've been interviewing probably more than anything, any one specific job, has been interviewing, reviewing applications.
Sure,
that
okay.
kind of thing.
And then, how is the relationship between, not relationship, but how does it work, I guess, in your mind or your opinion, between you, the city manager, and our land use attorney? Is there a hierarchy of decision makers? Do we lean upon all three are y'all three legs to the seat? You come together and make decisions, like in regards to the department, violations, codes, ordinances? How does it work?
It's case specific. It's
Okay.
not on every single, like, I don't defer every single decision, but I think we do consult. We consult with all the department, during senior meetings or anything.
Right.
So we do confer, but Kimberly's involved in a lot of our meetings with Lance and I. Lance, sometimes Webb's in it. So yes, I have a weekly meeting with
Right.
the city manager, so a lot of the meetings come up during that weekly meeting.
Okay. And then like utilizing, a minute ago you said using Kim for these meetings and training, is that something that should be handled more by you with these certifications and things like that, to be able to do that rather than paying our land use attorney to do it? Or is that just necessary at this stage in
Probably at
being
this
here?
stage, I could honestly tell you I don't know every city of Destin
Sure.
code.
Yeah, it's a
And
lot.
she probably knows them more as 7 years. I think she's had 7 years, something like that.
Right.
So she's been here a lot longer. She is an attorney. I think that gives her training even that step up.
Okay.
And I'll also say, I am not involved with code compliance's administration or day-to-day stuff. The only time I hear about anything is when it is raised to probably Lance and I, or if code compliance needs an interpretation of an ordinance that's already been discussed with community development. So I don't know everything going on in code compliance all day long at all.
Right, okay. I'll close up and wrap up here and bill for it, right. Yeah. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt to lead this department. I mentioned at a previous meeting how when I talked to you before you were hired, I shared things with you and concerns and all that. And so you got thrown into the deep end, as we said before you got hired and so forth. And, you're still here. And I'm glad you're still here. So I'll give you the benefit of the doubt for moving forward. But for me, I have 2 more years. It's a short rope for me in the code compliance department, because it's just been for 2 years, and before that as a citizen, it's tough. It's the same thing. You know, I'm not paid to be here. None of us are. I have full-time jobs. I shouldn't have to be going back over code compliance things and cases and going to look at stuff and then finding something that went wrong or wasn't reported or was incorrectly reported, and then meet with the city manager or whoever, and then, well, that particular time this and this happened. Because it seems like any time I do that, there's always that, well, that particular time. I'm getting fed up with it. I know my neighbors are getting fed up with it. I know other advocates in the city are getting fed up with it. And so my priority is do the simplest of things, please. And I get training is important, and that should hopefully take care of a lot of it. You know, the smallest things of just when you're driving down Indian Trail and you're going somewhere, be observant of what's going on around you. When you see that same pile of trees for 6 weeks, do something. And I've expressed that to staff members. Haven't quite gotten that finished up, so I look forward to that one. But that's the simplest of things, in my opinion. All AICP, PDs, and all this stuff, I get it. But I just would like to just be simple. Keep it simple is my only thing.
Thank you,
and hopefully
sir.
that will get us there.
All right, thank you.
That'll be my main priority. And so
All right.
thank you again for being here, and I look forward to continuing.
Mr. Wagner, got anything new?
I'll make it real quick.
Thank you.
Yep.
Need to take a break here after this.
No worries. You asked for the priorities, Holiday Isle, derelict vessels, illegal commercial. I'll give her a second to write it down. Crystal Beach. You're everyone's hero if you say beach chairs, AKA traversing the beach and commercial beach chairs. And of course, parking in the right-of-way. There's the 2 and 2. West Destin. I like to call them Sanford and Sons properties. And the last one being Joe's Bio illegal charters. There's our 3 districts and the top 2 priorities. Not my opinion, the people that I've talked to.
Okay.
And you can watch the YouTube video to get those all down, so you don't have to write
Yeah,
them
I'm
all
sorry.
down.
He wanted me to be quick, and I had them written down.
And you are quick. Thanks, sir. Mr. Bagby.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try to be quick also. I agree with Kevin. You shouldn't be talking to any one of us individually. City manager works for us, you work for him. So if we have an issue with anything your department's doing or any other department's doing in this city, we need to go talk to the city manager and just go camp out in his office. So I think, hopefully, we all agree on that. I will ask city manager, when we do the strategic planning in January or whatever, I would like at least a 30-minute section blocked off of that 2 days to deal specifically with what our priorities are, okay? Because, you know, the 3 top priorities I wrote down were rogue vessels, short-term rentals, and right-of-way parking, okay? So those are my top 3. I don't care about the parking lot. I understand that's a revenue stream, and we ought to get in there. If they're not paying their $5 or whatever, we ought to get our money because they're using our parking lot. But what we ought to tell you in that 30 minutes in that strategic planning is what we want you to be proactive on, not reactive, because yes, you are a complaint driven. And so if nobody complains about those trees sitting there for 6 weeks, you know, you shouldn't, in my mind, you shouldn't do anything. Somebody, unless we tell you, we want our right-of-way cleaned up, and we want you to make sure that you make that a priority. And here are your 3 priorities that you're proactive on. So finally, thank you. You're doing, you know, you got a tough job. And like I've said before, the first 8 years I was here, every year, every time I ran, every time anybody else ran, the biggest complaint was code compliance. You know, because nobody's going to be happy. Because I'll tell you, on right-of-way parking, we may make that a priority until you start writing tickets on permanent residents who park their cars across sidewalks or in the right-of-way because their kids came over or whatever. And then when they're in front of that magistrate, they're going to be mad as hell because you're doing your job. And I guarantee you that's how it works.
Rodney, and then Mr. Destin, and we're going to let this lady sit back up.
Thanks. I just have one question. Why is Danny Sullivan training everybody when he's not totally certified himself?
He's not training them on International Property Maintenance Code. He's training them on the job itself, the entering complaints into InterGov, the taking the pictures, the going out in the, how to approach a complaint from the basics.
So does he hold all the certifications required to be a deputy?
Yes, he was hired for that before I started. The deputy director?
But he holds all the certifications that a deputy director is required to have for the city of Destin?
You're only required to have level 1, and he has level 1. He has the levels. But he was hired as the deputy director before I started, so I wasn't part of his interview process. I wasn't part of any of that. But he's been excellent from my first conversation with him till now. So I have no problems with him.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for being here, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rodney. Mr. Destin.
Mayor, I want to thank you for your presentation tonight. You've been up there way longer than you needed to be. The key to this game is working closely with the two attorneys. That way, your officers understand the ordinances and they understand how to enforce them legally. The priorities that I've heard here tonight, I don't have any special priorities. And after they all sound good to me, just try to do the best job you can. And after a long time sitting in this chair, it's going to be impossible for you to enforce the probably 1,000, if not hundreds of ordinances we have every day, all day. So do the best you can.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, announcements.
All right, real quick, encourage everyone to get out and vote tomorrow. We've got several places throughout the town. The polls are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., so please get out and vote. We got Veterans Day holiday coming up November 11th, and city facilities will be closed. Our next city council meeting will not be the normal day. It will be on November the 28th, and that's when we will have our inauguration ceremonies. We have an event called the Crop Drop coming up on November 19th at Destin High School, so they're looking for volunteers. Anyone interested can contact myself or Michael Burgess. And good news that I got today from Mr. Jeff Kozad, our grants and manager, is that the TRIP grant officials notified him today that the $1.8 million request for funding to be used towards acquiring the remaining properties we need for the Crosstown Connector has been allocated. So we're relatively sure that that money is coming forward, which is a big gain. So thank you there, and that will help, now that we've got the 100% plans, help move this thing forward. Finally, most of you know this, but the Tarpon Beach acquisition did close last week, so we have an additional 350-ish feet of public beach land, runs in between Tarpon Street and Dolphin Street, so that's a big gain for us out there.
Hallelujah. We are going to take a 5-minute break before we get into our public hearings. All righty then, waiting on my council members to come back to their table. Everybody get back up here? Yeah, he was too busy chatting.
Okay.
All righty then, I'm gonna go ahead and call this meeting back to order. I think Mr. Bagby will be sitting in his seat in just a second. In the interim. Okay. No. We need the Jeopardy music right now. Where'd they go? Come on, Jim. Got a quorum? I'm with you. Kyle. It's Kyle's show anyways right at the moment. Go ahead, Mr. Bowman.
All right, this is item 5A, the first reading of ordinance number 2217CC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, providing for amendments to the Code of Ordinances for compliance with state law, amending the code to add provisions for post-occupancy inspections of condominiums and cooperatives, providing for purpose, providing for definitions, requiring milestone inspections, providing for enforcement by city, providing for findings of fact, providing for incorporation into the Code of Ordinances, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date, and this is a public hearing.
Seeing how it's a public hearing, I'm going to open up the public comment portion of this public hearing at this time for ordinance 22-17-CC. Is anyone in the audience want to come forward and make a comment on this first reading of this proposed ordinance? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment period and entertain a motion.
I move the City Council approve ordinance 2217CC on the first reading.
Second.
Motion is second. Is there any comments from the council on this particular motion? Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote. Vote unanimous, ayes have it, so moved. Kyle.
Thanks, Mayor. This is item 5B. This is the first reading of ordinance number 2220CN, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, approving the form and authorizing execution and delivery of an amended interlocal agreement between the city and Okaloosa County to facilitate the city's acquisition of certain beach property and the development or redevelopment of such property for public recreation and tourism purposes, and to establish the respective financial obligations of the city and county associated therewith, repealing conflicting resolutions and ordinances, and providing for an effective date, and this is a public hearing.
All right, and seeing how this is a public hearing for the first reading of ordinance 22-20-CN, I'll open up the public comment portion of it. Does anybody in the audience want to make comment on this proposed first reading of the ordinance? Yeah, go ahead. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 2220CN on first reading and to authorize city manager to encumber the city's portion of the county's design services contract C192748-PW Task Order 7 in the amount of $327,426.84.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second. Mr. Destin? You got it? All right, Mr. Braden?
Do we know, I know that's, I guess, our portion of that, the 327, so I guess the total design has got to be roughly $700,000. Is that, what are they designing for that kind of money? Is that one park, two parks?
That is both Tarpon and the Shore Crystal Beach, the modified one.
So that's design one park and modify another one. And that's $700,000. It seems like a lot of money to design a parking lot and a couple pavilions. Is there something else involved in that I'm not, don't know?
You know, that also includes restrooms and other facilities on there.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, I appreciate it. I'm trying to go through these pages real quick. I understand what we're doing here with the interlocal agreement to adjust based upon the change in condemnation of the property. What I don't understand that we are doing is moving forward to redesign the Crystal Beach properties. I'm not sure why we're doing that tonight, because I thought at the last meeting, when we decided to not go forward with the beach acquisition due to certain reasons that were said that night, there was comments about looking at options to do at this area. Options such as selling a parcel, options such as talking about it more and figuring out what the city of Destin wants to do. And then now here we are redesigning it into using 2 parcels and 1 parcel at Crystal Beach. So how do we get here tonight based on what the last meeting?
The intent of those designs is for it to be scalable, but also to be usable in the upcoming future for the public to use.
Scalable for what? Scalable to do what with? Build on? Like,
to be able to use for public use now, and to take in consideration of anything that might happen in the future, but to get the core functionality of it with the restrooms and the parking that's necessary for that park now in order to open it up to the public.
but what could happen in the future? Where are we going to scale?
The way that it is being proposed between the city and the county in our discussions is to ensure that the fundamental use is there. But if anything happens in the future, it could be expanded if there was ever anything in the future in that general area.
And I guess, is there not a reason to have further discussions about that area before we are presented with this particular thing tonight, to agree to paying $500,000 almost, or $400,000, which is our half, to just go forward with it, just to start doing what the county is, or to start doing what somebody is wanting us to do, rather than discussing what our intentions are with that area?
This is a partnership between us and the county is responsible for the design with our input and us working with them. And what is being proposed is for us to be able to move forward specifically with Tarpon Street, and then also be able to allow for Shore Crystal Beach to have the facilities necessary.
I personally have an issue. I hear you, Webb, what you're saying. I personally have an issue with how this is being presented again. For 2 years, we've been talking about the Crystal Beach gateway to Crystal Beach, or gateway to whatever. We quickly shut the door on it, and then 3 weeks later, we're redesigning it with pieces of parcels without even further discussion from anybody up here about it. So I'd just like to make a substitute motion to approve the interlocal agreement section only. Approve the ordinance. I can't, you mean read the whole thing? I move the ordinance 2220C on first reading. I move to approve ordinance 2220CN on first reading. That's my substitute motion. Well, there's 2 parts of the motion. There's a part to approve the ordinance, and then there's a part to encumber the city's portion of redesigning of parcels that were supposed to be 4 parcels of a park. 2 parts in this motion. I just want to go ahead with the ordinance that fixes the resolution, that we're no longer trying to take the property. And I'd like to then be presented with, at the next meeting, let's talk about what our options are over there. Could we still possibly buy that property? Why is Trust for Public Land asking if we can still buy it? Do we know? So I'm just trying to figure out, Trust for Public Land's still trying to buy it. So maybe that's the future. Let's be transparent. What are we missing? So for tonight, I'll just do the resolution, hopefully. It's my substitute motion. but if there's not a second, it's okay. That's my reasons for trying to do it.
You're seconding. All right, discussion. Bobby?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So, in line with that, as far as the design, is the design also taking into consideration the road, traffic, speed curving, or any of that into the design, or is the design just south of the highway there?
It takes into consideration, and Jeff helped me out here, but it's certainly going to take in consideration ingress, egress to the parcel, parking, all those things that would be required on that.
Okay. Yeah, just from the Tarpon place, obviously, we've got a few locals over there that are concerned that now it's going to be a hotbed and they can't even get into their driveway now. So I just wanted to kind of make sure that we're forward-thinking and proactive on the amount of traffic that we'll be presenting into that parcel as we get that 351 feet of beach access.
Yeah, and I think it's helpful for us to also point out that this is setting aside the funding so that we can move forward, or the county can move forward with us and our input on that design. And any design is going to come back before council.
Okay, thank you.
Up next, Mr. Bagby.
Okay, maybe I'm confused, but I thought the money we were approving is not just for the design of the Crystal Beach, it's also for the design of the Tarpon project.
correct.
Okay, so I'm not willing to not provide the money, particularly for that Tarpon project, which we just closed on. I understand what you're saying, Kevin.
Aren't there
but
multiple task
I'm-
orders, though? There's multiple task orders, right? This is specifically for task order 7. No, that's what
No.
it says in the motion.
Task order 7 is Tarpon, correct?
It includes task order 7 and 5.
Yeah.
And
So then here we are having an issue of approving a motion that says task order 7 specifically, and that's in the motion, but now we're saying it means something different.
Okay,
Am I
so
confused?
reclaiming my time, thank you. I just want to make sure I'm not confused. It is on the design of Tarpon and maybe something on Crystal Beach in the task order 5, which may get changed again. I don't know, but I just want to make sure that what you brought to us, because this really answers Mr. Braden's question of, what the heck is all that money for? Well, it's not to redesign the one little thing, the 2 parcels or 3 parcels, I guess, that we actually own. It's actually to design the Tarpon Beach parcel also, and that's really the main thing. So, thank you. I just want to make sure I read what y'all sent me.
Thank you. All right. Oh, I says first is me and next is you, but. So you want to be next or first?
Mine is just a clarification.
Go ahead, Dewey. I'll let you be
Okay,
next.
so we have a substitute. If that fails, then we go back to the original motion.
Correct.
Which was, okay, that's the only question I had, Mayor.
All right, I'm gonna make my points. The whole point of this, and this is not just Destin, and it's not just Destin's money, it's a joint venture with a joint partner, is to build what we have at this present time with the footprint that we have to make it usable. That's just on the one parcel. The other one's probably gonna, we got the whole piece, so that development, those plans, that money that Mr. Bray was asking about, it's gonna be, that probably won't get changed. But they're gonna scale it, and you're being polite by saying scalable, they're gonna make a flexible plan in the assumption that, A, they may be able to buy property to the right or to the left, depending on how the chips fall. But in the interim, by approving this particular ordinance, we can build something so people can use that park now, this summer, coming up.
They used it last summer, too.
And thirdly, by doing these little caveats that we have this habit of doing, it makes us really difficult to work with at times. And this is just one of those things. even politically, building parks and beach access, even if we have to redo them at a later date, is a win-win for everyone. It's a win-win for our tourists. It's a win-win for our residents. It's a win-win for this council, and more importantly, the city, because in the end, when it's all over with, this park belongs to us. We can change it however we want 10 years from now. So I think this is a motion that is not needed, and I hope it fails, and I hope we go back to the original motion and pass it, and let's get on with the show. Ms. Hebert.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make it brief. This is a perfect example of us if you change this to the current recommended motion, it's like telling the county, yeah, we're not really ready right now. And I'm not going to support this. We need to go with the recommended motion and be partners with the county and take the money and set it aside so we can fix these beaches and make them usable sooner rather than later by dragging this out.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll just close it off, please.
Go
This
ahead.
is my last one. Explain to me how our partnership with the county works on the designs.
We are partners to the same percentages that we are when the acquisitions. So on Shore and Crystal Beach, they're paying 59%, the city's paying 41%.
Right.
And with Tarpon, they're paying 50%, city's paying 50%. And then when at 30%, 60%, 90%, at least this council is going to get those and review those. It doesn't require, the interlocal doesn't require final review by the governing body except until the 90% plans, but I think staff's intention here is to bring it to y'all at 30, 60, and 90.
So
as-
we're
as a
getting
certificate
it,
of presence.
the county's getting it generated. They're going to send it to us. You're going to show us. We're going to give feedback, just changes, decisions that we want, and it's going to go back to the county, and then got to go back to their board, and then it's going to just keep ponging back and forth, or how do we do it together?
Yeah, I mean, I think same way we approve the interlocal, it's got to ping pong to a certain extent, yeah.
Gotcha. I just, again, I don't feel like much of a partnership here. And I understand, Mayor, that you want to go out, but we already got the beach. And I just think, once again, we're getting stuff fast-tracked quickly. Again, and we got the beach already. It was used tremendously last spring and summer, as it is. So I think it continued to be that while we look at this to make sure we're all on the same page. But that's all I had.
We have a substitute motion. Let's go ahead and take a vote.
I got one more question, Mayor.
Oh,
Do we know do we have any idea what we're getting for the $327,000 that we're spending? Do we have any idea?
In the task orders, they have certain deliverables. So, for instance, you get a boundary survey, topographic survey, geotechnical investigation, overall concept layout and rendering, 30% construction/architectural plans, 60% construction plans, 90% construction plans, permitting, final construction docs, and bidding services.
Thank you, Mayor.
okay, go ahead and continue voting on the substitute. Got it. Motion fails. I'll entertain the previous motion.
One, just real quick, on the original motion, I think Kevin did bring up a good point. The number is correct, but I'm just hearing from Lance that it should have 5 in there as well.
I was going to
Jeff-
ask, could we
Yeah.
add task order 5 and 7 in this motion to be read correctly so that it goes through with the proper funding for the 2 tasks?
Yeah, I think that'd be fine. I know that 5 was the original design for Crystal Beach, 5A is the redesign, and then task order 7 is the one for Tarpon.
Okay, so noted.
So if you can modify your motion
I'll
to
modify
include-
my original motion as recommended motion, adding in 5A and 7. Can you fix that, Ray? Thank you,
Assuming the
sir.
second's okay with that, I just wanted to clarify again, that doesn't change the overall dollar amount, correct, Jeff? Okay.
No, I don't believe so.
Is that okay with the second, Bobby? Okay, second's a good approval. Let's go ahead and take that to a vote. Ayes have it, so moved. Take it away, Mr. Bowman.
Thanks again, Mayor. This is item 5C. This is the second reading of ordinance number 2215CN, an ordinance of the City of Destin amending appropriations for certain expenditures, expenses, capital improvements, and certain indebtedness for the City of Destin, Florida for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2021, and ending September 30, 2022, and providing for an effective date, and this is a public hearing.
And at this time, I will open up for public comment for on any comments for ordinance 22-15-C. And is there anyone in the audience wants to come forward and make a comment on this ordinance? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion at this time.
I move to approve ordinance 2215 CN on second reading.
Be fast around here late at night. Go ahead. Do I have a second?
Second.
Yeah, there you go. You get a piece of the pie. All right. Do I have a motion? I have a second. Is there any comments on the second reading of this? Seeing none, let's take a vote. Ayes have it, so moved. Kyle.
And finally, we got item 5D. This is the second reading of ordinance number 2216 CN, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, relating to livery vessels, providing for findings of fact, providing for a 6-month extension of the temporary moratorium on livery vessel permits, directing staff to develop recommendations for regulation of livery vessels, providing for severability, providing for expiration of moratorium on June 30, 2023, and providing for an effective date. And this is a public hearing.
And seeing how this public hearing, I'll open it up for public comment for ordinance 22-16-CN. Take it away. Nope, John, you good? All right. All right, cool.
All right, Mayor.
All right.
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 22-16 CN on second reading.
Second.
And I'll officially close the public comment period for the public record, because Bobby was really fast. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I have a motion, I have a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none? Ayes have it, so moved. Moving on, comments, presentations of Mayor, Council, Land Use Attorney, City Attorney, and Councilmember Braden, you are numero uno.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question, or a question that was brought to me. This is in no way, shape, form, or fashion am I suggesting this, but the question was, instead of buying the beach property, Crystal Beach, why did we not buy the .1 mezzanine property out of Noriega Point? I mean, I know we already have, 10, 11, 12 acres out there of property, and I don't know how many 2,000 feet of beach all the way around it, but could you elaborate a little bit on that, Attorney, please, why we don't buy that piece of property?
Yeah, sure, Rodney. And I think that the suggestion specifically to you was, why didn't the city condemn the property through eminent domain? So for the condemnation process to work, first, the council has to pass what's called a resolution of necessity, where you have to find a public purpose. Now, that's a legislative finding, so council, if y'all in your wisdom find that there's a public purpose, typically courts do defer to the council on those legislative findings. But the process doesn't end there. Then you've got to decide how you're going to acquire the property. You can do it either through a slow take or a long take. Slow take is where you don't decide the value of the property until the very end, but that is an extremely expensive process that requires a jury trial. You're probably looking at costs. It could be approaching millions of dollars, especially because you are footing the bill for the person you are taking the property from. So it's an extremely expensive process. So usually local governments favor the quick take process, where you acquire title to the property immediately and then litigate. You deposit in the court what you think the value of the property might be according to an appraisal, and then you litigate over just what's left. And that process, sometimes it does not even require a jury. There's some mandatory mediations. It's generally just a lot less expensive to local governments. But for that property, and I'm not an appraiser, but just knowing that it's got an existing DO on it, that it's a large parcel, large undeveloped parcel in Holiday Isle, you're probably looking at a good faith value if you're going to do a quick take that could have exceeded the city's budget, and it's one in a single year, I would say. So that would be, again, up to the council, but you would have to find the money for that somewhere.
That's kind of what I was thinking, that property that guy's got a development order on it. Yeah, if I had to guess that, it'd take $100 million to buy the piece of property, because that's probably what he would profit off that whole project. So, and if that's the case, then the city would have to put $100 million in an account to cover that while we went through the process of taking that land.
You could write a check, couldn't you, Rodney, for that much?
Some of it, all of it, some of it, right. And there was another follow-up question, and it was for Crystal. Our budget, the city's budget's 22 million, what's the budget?
Yeah, typical years in the past, it's been between 15 to 20 million dollars. I'll say our ad valorem that we collect, the main source of revenue, we're now up to $11 million a year, but it has increased significantly over the last few years with the change of hands of properties and thus the taxable values. But this year is exceptional and extraordinary. Well, last year we were double what we were in the previous year. We were at 34 million. Half of that, 16 million of that, was for capital projects, mostly grant funded. This year we're at $73 million. 52 million of that is for capital projects, again, mostly grant funded. So that we're talking Restore Act funds, TDC money, and so on and so forth.
So I guess just the money that comes from the taxpayers and the.
Yeah, the money that comes from the taxpayers, that's about $11 million, and most of that goes to cover our salaries, benefits, and our basic operations for the city.
And that's roughly?
That is roughly, let's see, I have that is, actually, it's about $15 million for salaries, benefits, and our basic operations, keeping the lights on. But besides the ad valorem that we receive from our citizens, we also have supporting revenues from the state of Florida that help us meet those needs.
Okay, thank you so much. That's all I have, Mayor.
Yeah, whatever happened to Build Back Better, right? We ain't seen none of that money, have we? All right, Mr. Wagner.
Awesome. I promise it's all in one, so I appreciate Ray for breaking it out. But yes, that was just one thing I was looking into a lot, talking to people in Crystal Beach, is the beach chairs, the ghost chairs, which is when people put up 50 chairs and no one's sitting in them, just in preparation, whether they come or not. So I really don't have a motion. I just really wanted to bring it up to council and share the frustration of people in and around Crystal Beach when they try to use the beach and traverse the beach. I know we have a lot going on between the mean high tide water line, the erosion control line, and where can I walk? Is it in the water? Is it not in the water? And so if there was going to be a motion, I guess it would be something to move city staff or city manager to look into communicating with our vendors and allowing them and us to understand where that line is, and just getting people on the same page. A lot of people, and the motion, a lot of people said that the vendors out there are great, they're fun guys to work with, and they don't have a problem with the attitude or the people. It's really just a miscommunication of where that line in the sand is. And so if we could do something to kind of create a better communication line, I'm really not trying to attack people, commercial business or residentials or tourists, but really just allow the quality of beach access to be there while preserving and protecting the rights of the locals who own the beach.
Kim, we've had that discussion. Haven't we set up with the county a proposal where we're going to have 20 foot from the water's edge up is going to be accessible? Nobody can set up a chair. It's safety fairway. Isn't that in the works now?
It has been in the works in the past. I would not say that right now it's something we're working on. I don't know, Lance. Lance and I talked about this earlier. I don't know if he wants to expand on it now or at a future meeting.
For the most part, at a future meeting. But I will say that, we've been in cooperation with the sheriff ever since I've been here, and there's a standing order from the sheriff's office that just says they will not enforce trespassing, I believe, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, within, I think it's 15 foot of the water's edge. Is that right?
We don't enforce trespassing within 20 feet of the water's edge.
Yeah, so with that, and then, back to our favorite talk today of code, I talked to a lot of the owners, and they go, well, they're not enforcing it, so what do you want us to do? So, really just trying to just create a streamlined process there, because I know we go in extensively with our livery vessels, with the parking, and just the actions it takes for their customers to get on the boat safely, and I think it's well worth just putting some effort in on the front end to, as they get their BTRs and as they get their vendor license to operate on each individual parcel of the beach, that we just have some kind of agreement of acknowledgement of, yes, here's the line, or at least we acknowledge there's that 20-foot line that we're not going to transgress.
Can we do that through policy or part of the permitting process, or is this a workshop type format that needs to be done? I know Okaloosa County, every year, their commission has a workshop for their beach vendors to kind of like set all the guidelines and rules for the year. Kim, would you like to address that?
I mean, we have various options, and we've had a ongoing meeting with several key members of the city, county, sheriff's office, and stakeholders ongoing in the past as well. So I think probably the way to start would be trying to work with some voluntary compliance type of policy. So Lance and I will put some information together for you all, because it has been worked on, like I said, in the past with this group meeting, and we'll bring that information to you.
Mr. Destin?
Thank you, Mayor, and I don't have anything tonight other than thank you for the time you've put sitting in that chair, and until you sit in that chair, you don't realize the work and the anxiety and the angst that goes along with the job. So I want to thank you for that. 4 years, 8 months, however it ended up.
Thanks to
And,
your son, by the way. Thanks, Parker.
Yep,
Parker,
that's-
if you're listening, thank you.
And that's the only item I have tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Destin. Appreciate the kind words. Mr. Bagby?
I want to echo Mr. Destin and thank you, Mr. Bear. It's actually been a great time working with you. We share a lot of common goals, I believe. And I also want to say thank you to Catherine Card, who I guess this may be her last meeting also. I've worked with her as a PIO and in other capacities, and she is awesome, and we will miss her very, very much. I had a question. Do we have constituted the City of Destin Construction Regulation Board? Does that kind of fallen into disuse?
We are in the process of reconstituting it.
Okay.
I understand it was disbanded when I joined the city, so we're putting it back together.
Okay, I appreciate that, because I'm getting very nervous. I'm getting reports that we've got general contractors and professional engineers and others who are not doing their job, and we need that enforcement mechanism to hold them accountable for what they're stamping or what they're signing or what they're saying they've done or not done. So I would appreciate that. And then finally, I would ask the staff where we are on the citizen survey, and I would say to our citizens, yes, vote tomorrow, but please vote tomorrow. But you've also, most of you or a lot of you have gotten citizen surveys. We want your feedback to help us set the direction with the new council and the new mayor in the new year, and a lot of that depends on the feedback that we get from the citizen survey. So I just would ask Lance or Webb to remind everybody when it's going to be done or when it's out.
Yeah, I could take that, actually. The citizen survey, the data collection portion of that is over, and we should be getting a final report from them by the end of the month.
Okay, so we'll look for it on the 28th of November. And I can't wait to see what they think. I'm sure they'll be very happy with code.
Thank you, Jim. Ms. Abear?
Thank you, Mayor. Jim stole my thunder. I wanted to say kudos to Catherine. She has been an absolute dream to work with, just done so many public events with her, public announcements, worked so many different charities. You are a true asset to our city, and I personally am gonna miss your steed here, and I've appreciated all that I've helped you do, you've helped me do, we've gotten done for the city over the last couple of years, and you're gonna be missed, and I hope Niceville's Okaloosa County School District appreciates that they're getting an awesome woman over there. So, secondly, Mayor, it's been an awesome opportunity sitting next to you, and I've seen you just scribbling stuff, and I know that this has been a challenge for you, and I appreciate the patience you've had with all of us and guiding us and leading us through these 4 years, 8 months, and several days. And look forward to seeing you out there contributing some good stuff to us and keeping us on track.
Yeah, you're not getting rid of me.
I didn't think so. And then my last item is I've invited one of our citizens that would like to help us acquire some beach property, re-engage with this property owner for the shores of Crystal Beach. And at this time, Adam, if you will come up, we're going to give you about 8 minutes to discuss with us, nothing from the past. Come on up here. And you will basically give us what your thoughts are, what you have, what you would like for us to, help bring to the attorneys that are in charge of doing this for us, and what you really need to make this work for you, but it also has to work for us. So if you can stay on track, just address us. You will not get any feedback from us because we just need to hear what you want, and then we will let our attorneys and the trust take care of it from there. So start with, turn on the mic, press it so it's red, and then put your
Name and address for the public record.
Adam Lamnon, 2968 Scenic Highway 98. I'd appreciate a couple more minutes if you can give it to me. I drove 10 hours to get here. I'd like to discuss my property, but more importantly, I'd like to clear my name. For the last year, I've been working with the city to try to put this deal together, and I've been disparaged. You've talked about my character, you've talked about my behavior, you've talked about my property. I don't think those comments were appropriate nor accurate, and I'd like to clear the record. I think our disagreement, well, first I'd like to tell you that community, leadership, and character are important to me. I've had 2 jobs in my life. I spent 5 years at Price Waterhouse. I spent 30 years at Assurant leading a large public company. And my reputation was always one of high integrity, always. I tried hard to put this deal together. I responded on a timely basis and properly each and every time. That property to me is a big part of my life's journey. I spent 7 months up here on my hands and knees redoing a 6,400 square foot home. That home puts me as part of this community. I don't get to vote here, but this community is important to me. I'm on the phone. I work on that property every single day. And most importantly, for you, it's beach access. For me, it's how I feed my family. And I work at it every day. Southern Vacation Rentals has 1,100 houses. I am #1. We talk a lot about compliance around here, but how you drive a short-term rental is reviews. My reviews are stellar. My repeat business is stellar. And I think most of our disagreement comes from a miscommunication between me and the Public Land Trust, which you good folks had no privy to, no access to. You didn't see you may have seen the option agreement, but you didn't see any of my emails. And from the inception of that transaction, I told them that it was a requirement that I got certain tax treatment. They responded in writing and multiple times that they would deliver it to me. And then on the eve of closing, they said, sorry, we're not doing it. And yet I was disparaged as a guy that backed out. It was put in the newspaper that I backed out at the last minute for no expected reason. Mr. Webb put a presentation that said we had a binding purchase and sale agreement. For you that practice real estate, that's a defined term. We didn't have a binding purchase and sale agreement. We had an option agreement. I understand that you weren't privy to that contract. So I understand your perspective, but I wanted you to understand mine. After that expired, we quickly moved to eminent domain. You sent me a letter on August 15th. I responded within 7 days and said, hey, your appraisal has some problems with it. It has comparable sales problems. It has square footage problems. It has age of home problems. I responded in a minute and said, here are the issues. We tried to work through it. I said, hey, guys, why don't you lease it? Why don't you do a land lease, a ground lease? What came back was simply nonsensical. Hey, we'll lease it for $1 a year. I called up and I said, hey, guys, what's going on? Let's put this thing together. Let's work on it a little bit. We were told, stand down. We have other priorities. For 5 months, nothing occurred. They said, we're working on something bigger, our number one priority that we're trying to assemble. And if you look at the documents, you'll see that there was no correspondence. Now, I'm an ex-auditor. My attorney said, don't bring any of it. I brought every document. If you want to look at it, you'll see my emails. Then you move to eminent domain. And very prominent attorneys say, hey, hire an eminent domain attorney. I say, no, that's going to block a deal, and it's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't need an attorney. I got up here after that appraisal, and I asked for the meeting. I called. I brought my appraiser, Rick, and we sat in a room, Lance, Webb, 6 or 7 city officials, and we tried to work it out. I left that day, we were 5% apart, 5%. They moved their bid up significantly. They asked us to leave the room 2 times so they could visit. We left the room, they visited with their appraiser. 6 city officials, their appraiser, me and my attorney. We try to work it out. We were 5% apart, 5%. I got in my car, I said, what's gonna happen? They said, we'll get back to you in a month. No phone call. I called, hey guys, what's up? Hey, we might not take it, we might take it. I said, okay guys, I got 50, 60 grand in fees because I paid all of it on my own. I didn't go hire an eminent domain attorney. An eminent domain attorney would hire the appraiser. I paid my own. I'm paying for him right now. He's reading on his phone. I paid for that. And I said, let's work it out, 5% apart. And then I see bad behavior, you're gonna tow my cars, you're gonna harass my guests. Okay. But you're out, you don't want the property. Okay. And then a week after that, here's the Public Land Trust, 2 weeks ago. Hey, we wanna buy your property. I got an email, you go, hey, is this Adam guy telling the truth? Here it is. Every document, every word I'm saying, I would encourage you to read it. We're going to be in litigation. You're going to take an easement against my property. My attorney said, don't come, don't show them documents. Hire an eminent domain attorney. Your most prominent attorney in the city said, you're crazy. You're an idiot. Hire an eminent domain attorney. I said, we can work this out. That's my side of the story. And everything I'm telling you is the truth. And I'm an old auditor. The best type of information is third-party corroborating evidence, and I have it all. And now you say, hey, we're going to build something that's scalable? These words, it's like we're dancing on a head of a pin. We're going to build a park around you, but it's going to be scalable? We all know what that means. You're coming for me in 12 months. I'm here now. And I'm honorable. And if you don't want my property, I'm cool with it. But I am not cool with being disparaged. And I'm not cool with somebody telling me, hey, the way I feed my kids, we're going to try to diminish that. And I'll tell you, building that house, aside from my wrestling career, that was the hardest thing I've ever been through. So it's quite personal to me. I was away from my family for 6 months. I lived in that house, finding labor, contractors, materials. I carried every tile up 3 stories of floors. It was hard. And I ask you to look at my reviews and understand if somebody was trying to take something from you, all I wanted was fair market value. Best appraiser in your city, my appraiser. You guys hire somebody 2 hours away that does DOT. So if you don't want my property, I'm fine, but don't disparage my character.
Thank you, Adam. Anything else for you? Nope. Mr. Schmidt.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir, for coming. Sounds like there's lots of future discussions that are possibly going to be had about this, or maybe you're not. I'm still very confused on what is going on around here. Sometimes I wonder why I'm even a city councilman, because I feel like some things that we do up here don't happen or matter, or seem to doesn't just stuff happens without us sometimes. I just don't get it. I'd like to put on my name for the next agenda, Ray. You know what? I'll be nice and I'll skip. Let's go to the first meeting in December, since it's going to be a celebration in the next one. The RFQ for the post certificate of occupancy. You can put that under my name, please. Any update on the Royal Melvin Park? Getting it done, turned over, or anything?
We did get a request, I understand, from the contractor to complete a final inspection, which would trigger a punch list to be generated. I think we're getting ready to move forward with that.
Great, glad to hear that. Any update on the Calhoun Park funding from?
No update. I know that the county will be putting that application in the treasury system this month.
Right.
Is the goal, but like I said,
Have you talked to them in the past few weeks? Because they said they were putting it in, like.
Well, the portal just opened the 1st of November.
Right.
And they expected it to take the better part of the month for them to get it in. So I haven't had an update since then, but that's my understanding. I also know that we want to update our plans to add to that application. So that may delay things just a little bit. We'll see what time we get them back, but we've already started that process.
What's the purpose for updating our plans for the application?
Because the plans that were drawn up, I think in 18, there's been a number of significant changes from then, and we want to make sure and include all those differences and make sure that we're doing things the right way this time, the best way we can, I should say. You know, maybe correcting some issues that we've had in recent projects and making sure we don't make the same mistakes again.
So just to understand the process, who's redesigning this and submitting it to an application for a project, for a park?
Well, the plans are being looked at by Scott Jenkins.
So were the previous plans approved by the council?
Yes, they were.
So do we not get a say in the future plans that you're redesigning and going to submit for a
No,
grant?
they'll come back to council before they get included in the final.
Before they get the final application
Yeah.
to the grant?
Yeah, they'll come back to council before we.
So that's the delays that we're talking about here, is just, we got to come back to council, talk about it.
Well, we do, but right now the county is in their process now, and we're not delaying that because they are not complete with that process.
So the portal to the ringworm portal opened up beginning of November, and applications this month. Got it. Yeah, it's Scary Things or Stranger Things. It's a good show on Netflix. That's all I had. Thank you for the updates.
All right. Moving right along, we might beat the 10 o'clock deadline after all. I was going to bring this up last meeting. We pulled it because that meeting was so dang long. One of the things when we were talking about the baseball park, and it was kind of reiterated, was a real struggle with Ms. Firth and the rec department, just keeping the facilities up, you know, trying to find time for everybody to play on the fields. You know, we heard all the different comments, stuff like that. And some of the stuff, you know, I'm taking the keep it simple approach, keep it simple, stupid approach. I qualify in the third part is, you know, is it better to have a whole bunch of different little programs that are half financed, half funded, half run because you're trying to please everybody? Or is it better to run some really top quality programs that best serve our residents first and foremost, and the facilities that they use? And so I asked her to take a good look at maybe going back to our traditional sports calendars that we grew up coaching, and when Kevin and Johnny were young pups, to say the least, and allow our Recs department to put on top-notch, first-class, traditional sports calendar programs. And then if the soccer program wants to run an alternate season, or the softball guys want to have a different league, well, then they can form their own little groups and rent our fields and see what's available. But I really think that we ought to put our residents first and their children before all, and put our recreational facilities in a position where we can provide them the best facilities possible and the best overall sports program, instead of having a multitude of others. Now, when she put that all together, she only removed 2 programs, so it wasn't quite as impactful as I thought it would be. I won't be on the council, but I'll be sitting over there making recommendations. I think it ought to be pared down a little bit more and have the traditional programs for each season and let them be the best they can be. So that's something that I think I'd be real interested to see what the council would like to do with that after the first of the year. But I think it'd be a really good idea to equip our Parks and Recreational Department to upgrade within their capabilities and provide fewer solid programs versus trying to please everybody all the time and everybody just getting, I'm not going to say less than adequate, but they may not get as good of facilities or as good a timing or as good programs that possibly if we pared some of this stuff down. And there's still room, there's still facilities available for some of these other organizations to rent our fields and run their own programs and let them carry that burden. But for our rec department, I think, and I'd like to hear from Lance, we really hadn't talked about it in depth because that's what you did when you first got here. You were a parks and recreational guy, and I'd just like to get your general feeling on looking at maybe going down that road.
I think it's worth exploring. I think we need to get the rec committee involved in it too. I don't know if we can turn back the clock or not, but I think it's worth looking at. I mean, soccer has become huge. Other sports have become huge. They were not huge when I was growing up or when I was coaching. So I don't know that we can completely revert back to football being in the fall, then basketball, then baseball, and track, and the way it used to be. I don't know, but I think we should look at it for sure.
As a grandfather of 8, watching my grandchildren go through what we did as a father of 3, and all 3 of my boys were athletically inclined, and a couple of them played college ball. I remembered the overlaps, and they were difficult on a family, to say the least, but that overlap also affects our recreational department, and so that's the only reason I was going down that route. Kevin, I see you want to chat.
Yeah, I'd like to add something, and then I'd like to make a motion based on your item here. But I know what you're talking about. I know where you're trying to go and different ideas based on some of the comments you made. Because I agree. When I was a younger kid, if I was 3 years old starting to play soccer as you as my coach, I probably would never come back again at 3 years old. You were tough as an 8-year-old, so I could only now they get out there at 3 years old.
And we were undefeated.
Scary Gary was out there killing us all, but sorry, public record. Last night, right? But right. But I think there's things as well though that I think what you're talking about is all these softball divisions that we have, and that the city, I believe their intent is to provide opportunities, I think, but then you do hear issues and staffing and all of that. So is there an issue or is there not an issue? But I'd like to make a motion, direct city manager to have department bring us back ideas for adjusting the recreational programs that the city of Destin provides, as well as pursuing options for outside organizations to assist and provide.
I'll second that.
Without further ado, let's go ahead and vote on that so we can press on with our last presentation from our city and land city and land use attorneys. I appreciate the motion, Kevin. I think the intent here is just to reevaluate and see how we can provide the best experience for our community in that realm of recreational sports. All right, let's go ahead and take a vote. Ayes have it, so moved.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll keep mine very short because I have the information in your packet. Basically, with respect to livery vessels, the state Fish and Wildlife Commission is going to be requiring livery vessels to register with them for the first time, and they will be doing some of that enforcement. In January, as you all know, we're going to get our Army Corps results, and right after we receive that, we will be having a workshop with the City Council, at which point we can talk about all the details of this new law, the results of the Army Corps study, and what regulations, if any, we are going to put into place before the moratorium expires in June. So with that, the information is here for now, and we'll talk about it again soon. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Kyle, do you have anything?
Nothing from me, Mayor.
All righty. This is last opportunity for public comment, so I'll open up the floor. Just, you know the routine. Come on up, state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Marcy Bell, 3 Gulf Breeze Court. So I come to these meetings and I think to myself, this is what I'm going to say when I get up there. I'm going to have a plan and that's what I'm going to say. I can tell you that changes. It changes minute by minute. So I want to end the meeting by flying a white flag to the Code Compliance Department. I said this to you when I met with you a few weeks ago. 6 months to become comfortable in a job, a year to become efficient. Got to do that. I still stand by everything I said earlier. It's code, we've got to do it. I need y'all's help. That's the first thing I have to say. Second one I have to say is, Holiday Isle, Mr. Mayor, I am on the ARB, and I would like you to know that we do catch a lot of things that would not be caught before they came here. They come to us and they ask us, and so I just want to put that out there.
I encourage you guys to be more robust and more forceful and put teeth in your rules and your enforcement.
Who else is here from Holiday Isle?
I know.
The third thing I have to say is that it hurts my heart that this gentleman had to come and say the things that he said to you guys for 10 minutes about that property. And this is what everybody needs to understand, at least for me as a citizen. You don't know what's going on when I'm reporting things. You're getting what I'm reporting, and I do my best to try to give you a picture, draw the lines, give you the arrows, give you the maps, give you the surveys. I mean, I really try to make an effort to explain what I'm reporting. But as a citizen or a property owner who doesn't live in town, regardless of whether I'm a residential property, a short-term property, a long-term property, it's hard for you guys to understand where we're coming from if you don't know that other side of the story. I will never report anything to code compliance that is a private property dispute. It'll never happen. It'll never come from my mouth. If I think that there's a code violation, that's what I'm reporting. Please know that if you're getting my emails. The last thing I have to say is, Mayor, you and I have had some words. We've had some exchanges. I have enjoyed my time here before you 98% of the time.
This is a good day.
But with that said, you and I will stand together in the audience and we'll work together because that's what the citizens do that participate in the process. Thank you. Oh, and I will see one of you there next week.
That's right. Good luck to the winner. Thank you, Marcy. Anyone else? Anyone else want to come up and make a public comment? Going once, going twice. I want to thank everyone for coming and see y'all later.